Good afternoon. The April 11th, 2023 board session is now in order. Paul, roll call, please.
Mr. Susan?
Here.
Ms. Wright?
Here.
Mr. Trent?
Here.
Ms. Campbell?
Here.
Ms. Jenkins?
Here.
Everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first six topics are rule development, public hearings to address policies. The first, board policy 3210, standards of ethical conduct. Is there anyone present who wishes to address this item? Is there anyone present who wishes to address this item?
You will not dress code the other. We need to look at that because that's discriminatory. So I'm looking at a policy that minorly is being tweaked, is ignoring the other problematic areas, is not listening to students or administration or the community or the parents. Matt, you had a video of dress code. I know it's been pulled. And you made a comment like, hey, some students are going to have to buy a new wardrobe. Our families can't afford food in some areas of our county. Some families can't afford rent. Of all the issues to tackle, dress code is low-hanging fruit. And I appreciated Ms. Campbell bringing up the comments at the last meeting that she received at her school forum. Dress code was talked about, and the majority of the room all felt the same way. The teachers in the room literally were saying, even administration, if my kids are sitting in their seats and they're learning, I don't care what they're wearing. So if we're gonna tackle this policy, tackle the whole policy, not just a couple words. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your comments. Moving on, is there anybody else that wishes to speak on this policy? Any board discussion?
Yes.
All right, Ms. Campbell.
You reached for your microphone. Oh, it's okay. Go ahead. Okay. Yes, this is one that I asked us last time to take a closer look at, and we were going to try to get some feedback.
Of the student. I agree. I think that's vague and subjective to who is making that decision. And also not necessary. We're being pretty explicit about stuff in here, so I don't think we need to put like a very vague statement that cannot or could possibly be implemented inequitably, depending on the student and their body type. Also, in the lower garments, when we're talking about shorts, it really bothers me that we have a sentence that says short shorts are prohibited. I think that it's just a silly thing to write in a policy. It's to me, that's like really old school language. I think we, again, make it very clear what is an appropriate lower garment to be wearing, especially when we're making it pretty explicit.
That there's some sort of input from students and parents that they might be able to do so. But I agree with you as far as a core, it's inside there, but it doesn't, to make sure that that is also including the SAC committees and stuff like that. But the other issue is that, I think that this has been an issue. Like there are some schools that are screaming that the dress code is unenforceable. So I think getting to a place where it is, and I appreciate everybody's collaborative efforts in making this happen. So with that, I think we're good. Anybody else? We can move on to the next one. We good? All right. Board policy 5600, student discipline. Is there anyone else who wishes to address this item? Anybody who wishes to address this item? Any board discussion? Moving on, next board policy 5610, removal, out of school suspension, disciplinary placement, and expulsion of students. Anyone present who wishes to address this item? Anyone present who wishes to address this item? Is there any board discussion? All right. Last is the board policy 8420.02, protective facial covering during a pandemic and epidemic events. Is there anyone present who wishes to address this item? Anyone present that wishes to address this item? Any board discussion? Hearing none, that concludes our public hearings. We have a couple of things that are supposed to be presented to, but we have a lot of people here from the middle school task force. Can we move them up first so that because I see we have some administrative staff and some other individuals, we might want to give them a break. Would that be appropriate, or do we have to go? Okay, I would, and I'm sorry that you may not be ready because I'm jumping the gun here, but I thought that it would be appropriate for our people to be able to get out. It's not that we love having you, but like Mr. Brown and stuff, I know you guys are very important in that community. So Ms. Sullivan, please, you have the floor with our Reimagining Middle School Task Force. And while she's getting that ready, I want to say thank you for all of you for the time period, because you guys don't get paid for this. You're trying to give input into what we're doing, and I really appreciate the time that you guys have put forward, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Susan, Ms. Han, board members. We're so excited to be here today. We've been jumping out of our skin to share and talk about the incredible work that this team has done. And your introduction was perfect. These are warriors that are just really committed to the process and the time that we have spent. Before we get started, though, I want you to picture something in your head. In every one of our community meetings, parent meetings, teacher meetings, the first question we asked everybody was to describe the typical middle school student. And I won't put you to task for saying the things that are coming to mind, but it's going to involve a whole range of things, from like hormones and excitability, but also shyness and quiet, all of those things that come with this incredible age. And the real goal of this team was to honor that as awesomeness. This presentation is called Middle School is Awesome for a reason. And our fleet of middle school educators love everything about that child that you're picturing, all the differences in them, everything that they bring to the table. And what we want to do is use all that we know about those adolescents as the basis of our framework. It comes first, not after. So middle school should be different than elementary, should be different than high school, and should have some undergirding structures that are emblematic of the children they serve. I have to introduce this amazing group, and I'm going to take a minute to introduce all of them, because most of them have been with us for a year and a half now, every single month, doing some real heavy lifting. And I'm going to ask them each to stand when I introduce them. Stephanie Booth, she began this as a middle school educator at Jefferson and is now the middle school AP Dean at Cocoa High School. So she has learned a lot in the last 2 years that has been really powerful to this process. Thank you, Stephanie. Sherry Bowman, she's the director in my division. And I know you guys know Sherry. What you may not remember is that this year we actually restructured to have a single director over our 11 traditional middle schools. And Sherry's done an incredible job bringing the principals together for collective effort. Kathy Bramlett, I don't think is here. She represents our career and technical education department. Dietrich Brown, many of you know Dietrich. He doesn't need a lot of introduction. What you may not know is he's the brainchild behind Home Base. So many of you guys have talked about how important Home Base has been to the process. He has been there for us to really help us keep all those special needs in mind as we work through it. Scott Corso, principal of Delora Middle School. And many of you guys know Scott is a passionate middle school educator. We stole him from California, where he was San Diego's Principal of the Year, and on their reimagining process. So we were able to steal their work as well. Jasmine DeLauder, Principal Extraordinaire. As you guys know, she did amazing work at McNair Middle School, raised their school grade to a B, and is doing incredible things at Southwest Middle School right now, and a lot of neat structures in place there. Christine Ferrer. Christine is one of our exemplary 6th grade educators. You may have recognized her from, she's on many, many committees. I feel like Christine and I go way back from lots of different committees over the year. We love having our 6th grade educators on the team, because you're going to hear how this is really going to become a 6 through 8 footprint even if the buildings are different. Holly Ford, our Johnson Middle School media specialist, and lots and lots of impact and insightfulness on how we support schools in that space. Matthew Gent is not here with us today. Many of you know Matthew Gent. He's a coach and teacher at Central Middle School. He has been really important, has been with us since the very first meeting. Tara Harris, our Director of Elementary and Leading and Learning. She has also been the voice of 6th grade, elementary, how we work together to do great things for kids. Vivian Jones. Glad to see Vivian. Vivian's one of our middle school educators. She teaches at Madison Middle School. Her experience is in ESE and reading, and has also worked in 6th grade. So she's been really clutch on those social emotional needs of students and all of those other factors. So thank you. Dr. Danielle McKinnon, our Director of Equity and Diversity, obviously playing a huge role as we think about how to best serve kids in these areas. Thank you, Dr. McKinnon. Kathy McNutt, another principal extraordinaire from Hoover Middle School, has played a huge role in this team. Lots of neat practices from Indy Atlantic that we're going to look to replicate in other schools. You'll hear more about that as well. Mr. Reed, I think, is in here somewhere. There's Mr. Reed in the back. He's not sitting with us. Thanks, Chris. Director of Student Services, obviously an important part of this team as well. Want to recognize Kyle Savage. He is one of our officers at Brevard Federation of Teachers. He is himself a 6th grade expert. Kyle has been tremendous on our team as well. Jason Sherburn is one of our elementary principals, couldn't leave the shop today. But Nicole Sherburn, one of our 6th grade teachers from Creel Elementary, she's been on our team and we were thankful to have that. I'm going to leave Vanessa for last on purpose. Regina Taylor couldn't be here today. She is a counselor at Stone Middle School. And then Mira Trine, principal at Jefferson Middle School. And so pleased to have her as well. I'm mentioning Vanessa last on purpose because Vanessa has really been my co-leader. She and I began this journey together, have done all the research together, the data together, the co-presenting together. And in fact, she's the only reason where you're going to see awesome notes and minutes and process and paperwork. She's the yin to my yang. So I'm very, very happy. And I can't underscore enough how valuable our teachers union has been to this process and really trying to connect the hopes and dreams of our teachers alongside this important district level work. And so really thankful for their partnership through all of this. And so what you'll see on the next 2 slides is an overview of the process. This began in January of 2022. And in fact, we did a little bit of legwork before then. This is a team that was on hold due to COVID. We're going to be able to stop saying that soon. But we delayed its implementation, obviously because of some of the challenges that all of our educators were going through at that time. But one of the big projects we did before January was called Proximity Matters. And my entire team went out and interviewed about 450 kids one-on-one at every single school to talk about that 6th to 7th and 8th to 9th grade experience. And we just brought in random kids, not the ones the principals picked. I literally got the kids as they were coming to school late. I said, hey, you got to pass today. And so just talk to kids. What were those common themes? And that really began this work, our students. And I think that's an important thing to mention. We launched our website. We launched a series of meetings. Want to also underscore the fact that everything's been in the sunshine. We've had lots of great visitors to our committee meetings on both virtual and in person. Some that I just think can't quit us, and they've come to like more meetings even than some of our staff. So really great. The most important resource for us was from the American Middle Level Education, and it was a book called The Successful Middle School, This We Believe. And this book really became kind of our guiding force in putting together a model for exemplary schools in Brevard. We did lots of stakeholder feedback, students, parents, teachers, administrators, staff, community. You'll see a high level of that today, not all the nuts and bolts. We were super lucky that the American Middle Level Educators Conference was in Orlando this year. So the entire team was able to go to the conference and cull some best practices from throughout the country. And again, really putting the whole puzzle together from stakeholders to research to all of that work. And then we built our framework. Now, it took a little turn because we had an original timeline, but due to some changes, we felt it was really appropriate to put our recommendations in a phase 1 or phase 2, given a new superintendent. We didn't want to spring on some real financial difficulties that might be necessary, and we thought it was really important to separate out things that we thought would be more appropriate once a new superintendent comes on board. And you'll see some of those differences in a minute. And so the understanding our why, I'm going to give you a very high-level data overview just to kind of get a feel for some of the conversations that we had. When we did our meetings, we would do a meeting on just parent survey, on teacher survey, on student information, looking at different data indicators, real deep dives in every one of those, giving you top level today, some things that I found were interesting. But again, picture those middle schoolers. That should be in the back of your head for every conversation. How do we honor their oddities, their curiosities, their hopes and dreams, and that weird space that they're in? So discipline. So this is a snapshot taken like last week, and this represents this school year. And the tall pillars are 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. And I think you're going to be super pleased because a lot of what you hear today is going to tie into some of that great information we've received in just doing that deep dive in discipline in general. So I think these two things can march out very well together. 9th grade is really also a middle school thing, right? So we think about 6th to 7th, we think about 8th through 9th, and how we're preparing students for expectations. But we are certainly concerned, of course, and this impacts teachers, this impacts strategies and programming when you have to think about discipline alongside it. So Vanessa gathered this information for us, and I think it speaks for itself. So I'm going to just kind of give you a second to pause on it. And, you know, when we think about attribution for this data, it's kind of tough, right? Is it the kids change that much? Is it that middle school educators look at discipline different than 6th grade educators, right? All of these things are part of what we're trying to uncover. What can we do to prevent that spike? So in some cases, it might be consistency in the 6th grade, right? What's tolerated, what's acceptable, what's okay. In some cases, it's going to be structures in 7th grade that anticipate everything we know about middle schoolers, right? And how we use that knowledge to create our strategies and our rulemaking in the schools to address some of those things that we know. But we had to put it on the table because that's part of what we're trying to tackle. We looked at some student achievement data, and what you will see is 6th, 7th, and 8th side by side, and Brevard to the state. And so when you look at ELA and math both, we've said it a million times, our 6th graders are crushing it. They are our highest performing group of students in the district, and that's why every time the different discussions come up, we're like, yeah, but they're doing really great. And so really admire our 6th grade educators for that level of focus. And so then you're seeing 7th grade performance and 8th grade performance. And in 7th and 8th grade math, I brought in algebra and geometry as well for both the district and the state. Normally our 8th grade number doesn't include it. We calculated that in both as well. And you can see that 8th grade math is a concern. And Ms. Bowman will tell you that it has been, oh, I lost her. It has been, she would tell you, I promise. And the middle school principals will tell you it's been our #1 focus this year, is really keying in. We just did some really great work on using data, using progress monitoring to improve 8th grade math scores. It's been our observation. It's the principals are all shaking their head because they're tired of me talking about 8th grade math. So, but it's something we need to keep working on to improve for our students. Our students deserve to have the very best results, and our teachers, I know, are really motivated to help those kids. So this is an interesting graph, and it's kind of messy, but I'll give you the short version of it. So we looked at actual student grades, meaning the grades the student earned in the class. And ELA and math are particularly interesting. So let's look at ELA first semester, the very first stack of data. That grade 6 data, the blue, is the average GPA for 6th grade students in the first semester of math. And then the first semester of ELA. And then you see grade 7. And what do you see as one of the highest trends in terms of GPA? 8th grade, right? So doesn't feel right. It feels a little strange when we're looking at the other data. One is based on testing, the other is based on performance in the class alongside the teachers. And so one of the things that you're going to see as a recommendation for continued study next year is grading. You know, tackling sort of the question on grading, how we calculate grades. Are they measuring the most important standards in the unit? Why are they so dissimilar, right? So this information just really highlights the need for us to look at grading and how that works. And then in math, I guess it's good news that their math grade in 8th grade is lower because it's representative of the data, but obviously, again, we've still got to look at instruction that is impacting that in our targeted instruction. We've got this data in a lot of other different ways. If you're interested, I'm more than happy to send a fat packet of analysis. Just left some of the details out of this presentation today. And then we looked at our student survey data. And we were lucky we have survey 23 right now. And you know, these are the gut punch. When we hear from the voices of our students, that in my opinion are the most important voices, this is where there's a lot of tears. Our principals, when I go visit them and I say, how's their survey? And they're like, okay, well, I cried. And then the next day I cried again. And then I rallied the team on how we can support our kids better. And some of the questions that you see here are just a sample from the survey, but do you feel an important part of your school? Only about a quarter of our students, and we felt for 6th graders, that was particularly important because as a middle school person, I would surmise they felt king of the hill. They felt the most important. And as a secondary person, I would have guessed that the 6th grade would be higher than the other grades, and they weren't. However, we've talked about it a lot, and we've talked about a lot of strategies to increase the identity of 6th grade to feel more like they get special things. You'll hear things like intramurals and other activities and branding and common language that matches 7th and 8th grade, so they really do feel extra special in that elementary setting. So you'll see some of those strategies down the road. One of the other interesting patterns that, well, we've seen every year with our Youth Truth Survey, and again, going side by side with our discipline discussion, students are identifying how disruptive students are. And that's some pretty high-level thinking from our kids. So when you see a question, do students behave in class, only 19% of our 6th grade students felt positive about that. So only 19% said agree or strongly agree. So the students are aware of it, and they are frustrated by it. They're frustrated by it. But time and time again, and you'll see it in the next slide, they recognize how hard their teachers are working for that and how respectful teachers are of kids. So again, I think that's an interesting contrast. And those of you that have seen multiple years of that data, it's a pattern that we've seen before. In terms of relevant instruction, does what you learn in class help you in life? 22%. And the one that I think as moms and dads and as educators, you want kids to really enjoy going to school. And in our sixth grade population, only a third felt that kind of positivity around it, or a third on that day. But does the teacher help you and have you keep trying? A much higher response, which is particularly awesome because we know from an abundance of research that teacher expectation is a single big driver of student outcomes. We've done some work around opportunity myth and some other resources. We know how important teacher expectations are. So the kids are recognizing that their teachers have high expectations for them. When we go to our middle, so the questions are slightly different, which is why I couldn't nest them together. But again, I feel part of my school's community. That was the one question that every presentation we did, we shared that number. When we did our community meetings, when we did our parent meetings, we wanted everybody to realize this is a metric I want to target. I think it's very important for kids to feel a part of their school community. Again, you see a higher response on adults, their perspective, middle school kids' perspectives on how students are treated by the adults versus how students treat the adults. I mean, from the mouths of babes, right? And so again, I really applaud our fleet of teachers because it's visible even to the kids that the teachers really do care about that learning environment and care about protecting them. Again, in terms of relevancy, you'll see what I learn in class helps me outside of school, and I enjoy school most of the time. Another metric that we measure annually to see how that number is changing. A couple others I wanted to add from the 7th and 8th grade. You know, those middle school, there's more questions. Again, feeling part of school community. The next one is a new one. We added questions around project-based learning this year just to try to get an idea of what kids say. And this question had, by teacher speaking, by reading, and huge results of kids saying, I learn best by hands-on projects. And so that's going to really inform us when we talk about professional development and curriculum building, because they also said they experience that less than other strategies and approaches. So using this as we talk about those items as well. Are teachers connecting with your life outside of school? And again, a very high response on how many of your teachers believe that you can get a good grade if you try. And we do know that's important. So there's a lot of good stuff to work with here and to really tackle some of the struggles our kids are feeling in school on a day-to-day basis. I just want to pause there because we've got a couple meaty chunks. Any questions on anything so far? Okay. So hot off the press is our Insight Teacher Admin Survey. And I pulled 3 items that I thought were super interesting for this conversation. And when you look at the bars, I took school year 19, pre-COVID year, and then last year's school year 22, and then we have this year's data in already. And so the first chunk we're very excited about because a year ago, we sat in this room and one of our metrics for the challenge in middle school was how many more teachers in middle school wanted to quit than in other grade bands, right? So it was a dramatic difference from middle school educators versus high school versus elementary. And look at the decline in that number. That was like a bit of encouragement that we needed. That this year we went from 11% teachers saying it was going to be their last year to 6%. And I checked it like 5 times just to make sure I wasn't looking at the numbers wrong. But then my soul was crushed. And we saw a decline in teachers responding to my school is a good place to teach and learn. And that's one of those questions on the teacher survey that I measure for multiple years. You guys know I have a gigantic spreadsheet, and we monitor that question because we think it's so important that a teacher feels good about their school in terms of workforce, but also for kids learning. And so that is going to become a very new, another metric for us to keep targeting, looking school by school and reading the comments. We have thousands of comments to go through, and so we're going to deep dive into that. The other thing that I think is very powerful is that last cluster. And so one of the questions on this survey is administrators put average of time spent in different areas. And you'll see in 2019, principals reported 8% of their time on reactive school discipline, right? Meaning the situation happened and you're dealing with it, as opposed to these structures prevent discipline. Stayed 8% in school year 22, which was pretty amazing, pre-COVID, after COVID, jumped up to 19% this year. And those are the results from our middle school principals. Imagine the deans, those are pretty high bars, as you can imagine, but these are our principals having to spend that much more time on discipline than they had in the past. So you'll see, again, why these conversations are super well aligned to the other discussions that we're having. We looked at a lot of qualitative student feedback as well, and so this is just 3 comments from thousands. We read thousands and thousands of student feedback on their school's greatest strength. And from the mouths of babes, right? These are middle schoolers talking about thinking critically, the classes they take. And again, these are direct quotes. And what a student is recognizing in how their teachers treat other kids, how they're handled when they've had a bad day, whatever it is the kids notice. So when I looked at all of the comments on what is your school's greatest strength, most interestingly, the kids themselves reflect on the challenges in the course. More often than not, they cited the academic work as the school's greatest strength. Again, you may not have predicted that, right? You may have thought, well, PE is great. Well, they say that too in a little bit, so that's coming too. So these, again, are just a couple of thousands and thousands of survey responses that we've culled. Mr. Corso and the middle school principals, and actually really everybody from the team, we wanted to go back and get a little bit more information from our middle schoolers. This is this year data specifically about the reimagining process. And we got about 1,300 responses, and I'm really thankful to our 6th grade schools as well. We captured some feeder bands to just try to get what do the kids think. And as you can see, pretty good spread of students. And so they were able to choose what was the most important characteristic. And they could choose more than one, which is why they don't add up to 100. But look at the top. The top is about how teachers make them feel. And it's something that we are going to spend a lot of time in on professional development and the importance of just somebody really feeling valued. Many of you guys have heard our sort of secondary leading and learning mantra, that it's about people feeling known, valued, and inspired. And you have kids that are essentially saying those words, maybe not using my words, that I just want to feel like they know me, they value me, I feel good, they're excited to see me. We've talked a lot about those welcoming environments. But also interesting to me was school safety. The kids were keying in on how important that is to them. And, you know, and as questions come up, they're all here if you have questions that are ground level, right? Because I think one thing, and I'm sometimes wrong, right? I'm sometimes wrong on, even though I think I understand the principals, they know their schools, the teachers, the counselors, these are the real experts. I'm just the coordinator. Access to counselors, and then again, challenging curriculum. These were literally the top 5 responses from our kids. What would you add to middle school? So we asked that question. I told you, Mr. Susan, you'd be happy in a second. So these were, they could write it in. So Mr. Corso and the team kind of culled those responses. Football and sports, football kind of came up in particular, right, for all of you guys. They specifically named football over and over and over again.
Can I real quick?
Fine.
Listen,
This wasn't going to slide.
this was the only one I have so much written down. I promise you I was a good
No,
boy.
please, of course, I'm kidding.
Here's what we do, just so you know. Many of the sports programs, rec leagues, are starting to cost an exorbitant amount of money, so some of our kids are left out. They have no avenue for some of these things, and that's directly what I think this supplants. Plus, so I know that there's some kids out there that are in low socioeconomic places that have no ride and no money to get to these. When we provide these for our kids, it's also our commitment to our kids. And that's I get goosebumps right now, but that's what truly, when I see what's going on out there. So I applaud you guys for bringing up football, because that is a large chunk of many of the students that follow in that rule. So thank you. That's all. I just wanted to kind of join in.
And it came up authentically. Again, the data is the
Yeah,
data.
I didn't say anything.
The response is the response. We did not put these words in their mouths. Better food, poor Kevin. Just electives in general. I'm not going to break the news to them on access to phone, but typical things that you would expect kids in middle school. Like what are those things that they want to have? So then we asked our kids, what would you change? And the coolest thing of ever was the number one answer was nothing. The number one answer from all the kids was nothing. Second to that, you'll see the bell schedule. It does induce a lot of stress, and we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the presentation. And sorry, Sue, appearance came up relatively, but Ms. Hannah and I have had a lot of conversations on prioritizing our middles. The late dismissal's tough. That 4:30 timeline is super difficult for kids, and transportation. So nothing that as an organization we haven't tackled, but again, when 12 and 13-year-olds are saying it, it underscores its importance, right? It gives us that triangulation of data telling us that we need to key in on these things. Favorite thing about their school, people and friends, right? Again, they want it to be a place where they can learn how to be social, learn how to create friend groups. But look what's next. The second highest response was teachers. And again, really elevating the field of teaching for middle school students. That's going to be part of our goal, right? Like, how do we continue to let those teachers feel valued? How do we support them differently than we support middle and high school teachers? I laughed that they didn't like lunch, but lunch was their favorite thing. I'm guessing lunchtime.
Yeah.
And then you'll see PE, but then literally naming math and art. I thought, again, that's kind of cool to see that from kids.
That's the principal filling that portion out.
I'm sorry?
The principals are filling those out.
I like the food.
Just teasing.
So I had an opportunity for lots of teacher meetings. So in the fall, I did 5 professional development sessions specifically meant for middle school educators to come and get caught up. And then I did a series of Zooms with our 6th grade teachers, which was super fun. I was like a fish out of water, but they were amazing and gave us a lot of cool feedback. So I'm going to let you take a look at some of the things that came up in our discussions. I can't help but laugh at the first one in organization. I remember being in that classroom at Viera High with a room full of teachers, and a teacher said, I'm a split between a Walmart greeter and Border Patrol. And that just never
great.
left me, right? Because we do supervision, but with joy in our heart, right? That's a skill, that's a gift, it's a talent. You'll see a lot of discussions on homerooms, activities, clubs and activities. School-based time for that programming was a constant theme that came up, is how can we create our structure to do more school-based activities within the school day. And we have lots of different drafts and plans to look at. You'll see that over and over and over again, the idea of more clubs and opportunities for kids, purposeful tutoring, collaboration with the community, not a lot of surprises. Again, very thankful to our 6th grade teachers and our middle school teachers that joined us in this discussion. We had parent feedback in a lot of different ways as well. We did 4 community meetings that in each of the area that parents came out to, and Sherry did a magical job of tracking all those comments. We have lots more than the ones that you're going to see, but these are some highlight ones. We also had an online survey and got about 150 respondents from there as well. And our parents are certainly interested in more CTE programming in middle school. And of course, our CTE team is super happy about that. We've got something cool working out actually for Johnson. But we're looking at those feeder patterns and looking at how we can mimic some of those experiences in middle school. Again, the schedule came up a lot. The transition from 6th grade, where you have maybe 1, 2 teachers, and then boom, you're in 7th grade, 7 different teachers, not necessarily cooperation between the teachers, different deadlines, different rules, and 7 different teachers contacting parents. That's a lot. It's overwhelming. Our parents talked about special programming, right? So in this first example, it was specifically about the Eagles, but we heard it over and over again. I like that there's something for my child, and their either acceleration or remediation needs, or both, or music needs, or whatever it is. There was something where each child could find their people and find the support they needed. So again, you see a lot on electives and programming. And so all of this led us to the idea of what do we stand for in BPS as middle school educators? What is going to be, this is what every child in Brevard should experience in middle school. Yes, there's going to be some specialties. Yes, there's going to be some different things, but every child should have a baseline of amazing experiences from teachers who love that grade band. And so in that, we adopted the "No, it depends." And those are the 2 words that, I don't even know the right way to say that became the unspoken words that we never wanted to say. And let me give you some examples. We had a room full of teachers. We had a room full of parents. And we'd hear these awesome practices. Well, at my school, we blah, 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 blah. So if you went to that school, you had that experience. And then, oh, well, I do this with kids in my class. So if you had that teacher, you had that experience. I'm going to use Kathy McNutt as she's my constant example. They do incredible service learning programming at Hoover. And so if you went to Hoover, you got service learning. And so it depended on the teacher or the school, the experiences you had. Now, we still love like those individualized approaches, but there should be a baseline taking all the knowledge we know about middle school development, middle school kids, their awesomeness, and what's good for all kids, not dependent on their school or teacher. That as an organization, these are the best practices that our teachers are telling us, our parents are telling us, our kids are telling us, our national organizations telling us, and an abundance of research is telling us. Why should that depend on the teacher or the school? And so I'm going to take you through some additional work on our webpage, and certainly encourage any parents that might be chiming in with us today to log on. You can get to our webpage from all of the links on the main one from parents and students and teachers. And I'm going to show you a little bit more of what we did and what we thought about. And so right there, you'll see a stakeholder feedback. We check that all the time. I just checked it again last week, and look for feedback from our community on what they want us to hear. You will see the community meetings we held. We did a south area, a beach side, a central, and a north area meeting. We had lots of participation from our 6th grade community, so I was especially excited about that, because this is really about that next step. And here you'll see the framework, and this is very important. This is where we said these are going to be the overarching principles that we're going to consider. So the essential attributes of being responsive, challenging, empowering, equitable, and engaging. And I want you to key in on that responsiveness. And that goes back to what our original thoughts were. Picture that middle school kid, and using the distinctive nature and identity of kids that are in that grade band as the foundation which all decisions about school are made. And I'll give you just kind of a really easy example. Ms. Hannah and I, we talk a lot about renovating the classrooms in that space, and every single time it comes up, I talk about flexible, right? I talk about kids being able to get up, move around, new configurations, it not always being in a static manner, because who pictures a middle schooler in that way? In fact, Ms. Jones's classroom, we bought high tops, low tops, circle tables, just things that are more accessible and more organic to the child. I've bought, I don't know if you know, they sell desk chairs that rock. I bought a bunch of those, right? Because the kids need that. And so taking all the knowledge we have about kids in that age band and applying it to furniture and curriculum and support and guidance counselors and everything that we know in that space. If you look to the right, these are the areas we're trying to cluster our strategies around. What makes for a strong culture and community? How do we address curriculum, instruction, and assessment? And what are those organizational things? One of the things we talk with the principals about all the time is the importance of systems. How are you creating systems to withstand changes in different kids and different programming? You'll see a little bit more on our members there and those that served with us before. This is our meeting schedule. And if you looked up to the top, under meeting agendas and minutes, you'll see every single agenda and everything we discussed at every one of those meetings to kind of see the chronology of how we got to where we were. Again, super transparent. And then same thing, what did our community say to us at those meetings? So if you go into community voices and we went to South area, you'll see the responses the parents gave. So we've tried to make it super transparent, public for everyone, opportunity for people to catch up and see what we're thinking of. And then I believe all of this will come together as we lean into our recommendations. And if I do this right, okay. All right, before we get into the recommendations, my second pause for any
Phase
questions.
one. Here we go.
All right, we're rocking and
All
rolling.
right.
We're saving them for the end.
Yeah.
So,
I got
okay.
all my
I'm
notes.
writing mine down, but
Got all
I'm
my
So,
notes.
phase one are recommendations that we believe can be implemented in school year 24, meaning this August. And I say it with confidence because, like, for example, Ms. Bowman's been meeting with all the middle school principals all year. This is a back and forth between principals, between school leaders. Some of them, I might be a little hopeful, but I can be hopeful in this first presentation. So recommendation number one, and everybody felt strongly about this, especially our sixth grade friends, that we wanted professional development for middle school educators. And so that includes our sixth grade teachers. So it all hinges on youth mental health first aid, Chris Reed, no pressure. Assuming we can cross that hurdle before August, we hope to have a middle school conference in August that brings together our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers together, talking about all of these strategies, best practices, teacher presenters, of course, you guys know, always use teacher presenters. These guys would all run expert sessions and really strengthen that 6, 7, and 8 footprint. We think we can do it. We're also really excited about micro-credentialing. And so the idea that being a middle school educator requires some additional skills in your toolkit. And having opportunities for teachers to complete maybe on like the young adolescent brain, right? And then they would earn a micro-credential from completing an online course. Again, we feel it's doable, right? Yeah. Focus. So funny, focus has been a hot topic of conversation. We spent a lot of time at one of our meetings talking about sort of the unharnessed power of focus to connect student, parent, teacher, and admin to academic history, information, understanding a student's accommodations, disability needs. And so we're going to ask our friends in ET to prioritize middle school and community outreach, getting parents involved, because it's such a change going from that 1 or 2 teachers in a school you've been at years. We really think focus utilization can help bridge it, and our parent focus accounts in middle school is not great. And so just some public outreach and some training around that. Government and community relations, they've already kind of jumped on board with this, supporting branding, promotion, middle school identity, to include that 6th grade. So for example, we may have common banners in a feeder in that 6th grade classroom, in that 7th grade classroom, in that 8th grade classroom that connects the kids to middle school culture, expectations, grading, all of those things. And of course, we know we're right in the middle of our middle school videos, which we're really excited about having those promotional items. And again, parents are nervous. One of the things that came across at all of our parent meetings was like the fear of the unknown. And so the more we can do to eliminate the unknown, because we don't want to be a secret, though hopefully we can minimize those fears. Felt very strongly about on-campus transition, and this was one of those it depends. So in a room, I would say about 50-60% of our schools had a structured transition program, meaning inviting all the sixth graders to campus and putting programs in place. Last year, you saw a lot more of them because we were already on this journey of whether it was a Saturday, an evening on a school day, that kids had a chance to come to campus and learn about a lot of the issues that worry them. Again, demystify the unknown, we thought was really important, and really connecting elementary schools to that process. So we want to make it a requirement for all 16 of our schools. You will sometimes hear 16 and you will hear 11. 16 includes our 712s, 11 is our traditional middles, because those 712s do have some unique issues that we have to handle a little bit differently in there. We also want to recommend additional summer hours. So some things that we learned is the conversations that should be happening in the summer about whether it's a student's IEP, a student that's been in a custody issue, or, hey, I got the secret sauce on this child, you need to know it. The collaboration is minimum because in our elementary schools right now, they have no summer hours for their guidance counselors, and we have minimal in secondary. Right now, we have a little bit more because of ESSER. So we think it's really important to look at, and I'll be submitting budget requests, don't you worry, look at the need to have some of those elementary specialists available in the summer to collaborate with our secondary, to help minimize those bridges. I remember when I got the middle school, I got a call from a sixth grade, hey, this one has these issues. I was able to meet with her, and we bonded, and she just was one of the happiest students on campus because we were able to put things in place ahead of time. Class meetings and parent outreach. We talked about this a lot. Is it realistic to do this in the first week of 2 weeks of school? We believe it's essential. We believe, again, think about those discipline issues that arise, those communication issues that arise, that our high schools all do class meetings, meaning they bring the 9th grade together, the 8th grade, the 10th grade together. Our middle schools weren't necessarily doing that. It depended. And so we want everybody to, within the first 2 weeks of school, get in front of the parents and in front of the students, again, to demystify some of the issues. Team teaching must be prioritized. I know some of you are long-term educators. I was a middle school educator, and team teaching, I wouldn't be here today if it were not for the team of teachers surrounding me and helping me be successful as a first, second, and third year teacher. And in fact, an assistant principal at Eau Gallie High School was my team teacher 29 years ago. And so it's great for kids, it's great for parents, but boy, is it great for staff. It creates mini schools within a school where these 4 teachers share this group of students. And they are able to plan together, do parent meetings together, combine on curriculum and other topics together. And it's kind of gone by the wayside, so we're going to bring that back. But it also is important for our elementary schools. We want to see our elementary schools, and thank you, Tara, and she can answer any questions if they come up about what this looks like in elementary school. They did a lot of work on kind of doing a mini version of some of those things that we like to see in 7th grade to get kids, again, ready for that environment. So again, cross-team planning, hey, in my team, we do math tests on Friday, we do science on Thursday. Things like that make a really big difference for kids and families going into kind of the craziness of middle school. In terms of our students with disabilities, support facilitation model allows students to be in a Tier 1 instructional environment, which is very important for their academic development, but yet those teachers have an ESE specialist in the room with them, helping them support IEP goals. And of course, our love of home base and what a perfect match that is for students who are, picture this, a student in middle school with emotional disabilities and is also a middle schooler, right? So it's like the perfect confluence of challenges that we want to help kids get through. And so what we want, and I said prioritize because not all schools through attrition and through natural things will get to 100% next year. But I think most of the principals are all really adjusting their schedules already. Co-curricular and extracurricular activities, very, very important. And one of the interesting places we landed at was 6th grade. Again, think about those low results on being valued at the school, interaction. So we'd like to see the first expansion of intramurals be for 6th graders. Basketball is a great topic for kids to be able to be on a team, get all the benefits of that, the activity of it, the identity that comes with the representing their schools. And in fact, it was one of our community members who attended one of our In the Sunshine meetings where he was like, have you thought about expanding it in 6th grade? And we're like, that is really the right answer. So talked a lot about that. Again, something kids could earn going into 6th grade and not feeling like the undesirables of an elementary school. And so looking at additional clubs, of course, and additional programming. Lunch, boy. So middle school lunch is a special thing, and if you don't know what I mean, please volunteer for lunch duty at a middle school. It is like the perfect storm of just humor, love, funniness, and like popcorn behavior, right? It's whack-a-mole, that's what it is. Oh, we don't whack them, so don't fret, I shouldn't say that, but it's akin to playing whack-a-mole and kind of jumping around and targeting issues. We want schools to be very intentional and very deliberate. We have a lot of discipline issues that occur in the lunchroom that we believe with good deliberate planning can prevent it, but kids need positive social time. They just need it in a structured way. So they need to be able to get out, they finally saw their buddy. Middle school boys, I hate to say it, like jump up and like to hit the ceilings. And so like they have a chance to jump up and not get hollered at and sort of all those things that come with that. We want to say, how can we allow that energy to happen in a structured way? Should we look at separating 7th from 8th grade in the cafeteria? Is that a really good way to do it? And in our 7-12s, does it make sense to have our middle school's lunch differently? Something we're really, this is the thing I'm most excited about. They just entertain me. So think about student government in our high schools. And, a lot of the research we read was about purposeful education, student engagement, student advocacy, student have an impact, and we thought about middle school student congress, kind of our other version of it. And each school provides an opportunity for kids to have a role in governance. So let's say they're going to change their middle school lunch plan. Mr. Corso would bring in his student congress and they would debate it, and they would talk about it, and they would advocate for some things. So our 6th grade classes would select 2 representatives every 9 weeks. Again, we don't want it to just be the obvious kids. We want a variety of kids because we want to rotate kids through student congress. I happened to be on a Zoom with an elementary principal the other day, and I brought this up. And I ran into her last week, and she's like, I just started that. That was a good idea. I had to change something, and I made a little congress to do it. They become part of the advisory group. 7th and 8th grade will have homeroom-like spaces. We haven't technically called it homeroom yet, but we're getting there. And select, again, representatives to meet with the principal. And then I would like to hold district regional events. So, Mr. Susan, I think you've been to D2, where the high schools come together. It would be something like that, but for our middle school congress. And I said regional events because of busing, distance, transportation, but have like a South area middle school congress, a North area middle school congress, where we're bringing in those leaders from 6th and 7th and 8th grade. Very excited about it. We would ask the high school D2 students to coordinate the events and do some activities, which we think would be great for them as well. And again, being active in their community. Plan for transitions is very, very important. We would require it. Again, transitions, when we look at discipline referrals, we can look at them by location. So I sit with a principal and we pull it up. We say, okay, are your incidents happening mostly in the classroom or are they happening in common areas? If they're in the classroom, then it might be professional development, admin getting in those classrooms more, common sequence. If in the hallways, it's probably an admin problem. I say that lovingly. In terms of we need to change our supervision patterns, we need to change how kids walk through these corridors, right? It's a structural problem. So we're going to ask them all to develop a plan for those transitions. I have to say, post-COVID, those one-way hallways were dreamy. And so things were so smooth when we implemented a lot of those. It's a great strategy to hang on to. We're interested in campus monitors. And so bear with me. So remember the discipline discussions we've been having. Think about the other ones. We have to think of solutions that make sense in this hiring climate and financial climate. Campus monitors are a great solution for that. Right now, we have campus monitors at each of our high schools only. They're the first ones to respond to a critical incident. They're the first ones to go get a student from a class. They're monitoring the hallways the entire time. And they are typically community members who are attached to the school and absolutely want to do that work. We added campus monitors this year to Cocoa Beach, West Shore, and Edgewood. All of them hired somebody in one day. So it wasn't like our other challenges in hiring personnel. They do immediate intervention. They'll be trained in youth mental health first aid. Knowing what they do in a high school and knowing how impactful they are, I really think this is a great solution for some of our settings that need some additional support. And so we're going to be submitting some recommendations in that space. So think about all those challenges we've had and how this one person can really make a difference. And then our deans can focus on helping out in the classroom, being in there, being more preventative and training and support, and of course, outcomes. Service learning, I mentioned that briefly. We think that is a great way for a student to be positively engaged with their community. I'm going to steal Kathy up for a second because I don't want to steal her thunder and give her a second to tell you a little bit about the service learning class and program at Hoover so that you can have in your head what we're looking to do all over.
Thanks, Dr. Sullivan. So the service learning class at Hoover is really appropriate for that middle school student. You've seen the data that talks about hands-on project-based learning, and it's really stemming from the kids. So it's coming from that exploratory side of their brains, delving into that curiosity where they identify either a school-based project or issue that they have or something within the community. And then the students work on developing an action plan, executing it, seeing the results and reflecting on the project. So we've had students do everything from, hey, there are backpacks all over the floor on the way into the media center. We're gonna build these awesome carts to keep all of our backpacks and personal belongings safe and have an allocated space for them, to meeting up with, working with the local community. We've had a group of students who have gone to town hall meetings, the Indy Atlantic town hall meetings. They worked on a beautification project. So they really got their hands in the community. And I think one of the major benefits is that we see with our students that kids who maybe didn't view themselves as leaders, or they're looking for that role in a group, they find something that they're passionate about, and we see these kids rise to the top. They really start to view themselves differently. They're accomplishing a task that they're proud of. And then we have students who want to continue in, it's a semester-long course, who want to continue in that course that following year because they want to carry out their project on a bigger scale. We also had the opportunity to take it a couple years ago, pre-COVID, to a whole school-wide event where we had all of our students either on campus or off campus, at elementary schools, at assisted living facilities, at Goodwill. We had our day that we called Take Flight, where we went out in the community for our kids to give back. And it's also an amazing opportunity for our community members to see that those middle school students are awesome.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I'm gonna turn it over to Christine to tell us what would this look like in 6th grade. Again, we want 6th to 8th grade to clearly be our middle school.
In 6th grade, some of the things that I've done either at my old school or at Endeavor now, last year, students started seeing a lot of the weeds. You know that we have the problem with less people to do the yard work, the lawn work at the schools and things like that. We had some a beautification day where it was part of our service learning of that month. It was during generosity, and we said, how can we be generous? They said, let's give our time. We went out, we had gloves and we had Publix bags, we pulled some weeds. That was just, a 30-minute period. This year, we were noticing there was a lot of, around our portable, we were seeing a lot of garbage from the snacks and stuff that the students get. They were like, we've got to do something about this. And we said, well, what can we do? We went out there, we pulled, and we just started picking up garbage. One of my students took it a step further, asked if she could have a meeting with Miss Murphy, which she was able to get, and said, I'd like to see a garbage can out by our recess area. So, and then when that did happen a few weeks later, she came to me, she's like, look, we got a garbage can now. And it's those little simple things that help them feel like they are part of the school and part of not just always complaining about something, you can have some problem solution in there as well.
Love it.
Thank you.
And again, we don't want it to depend on if you happen to have the amazing Ms. Ferrer or if you happen to go to a certain school. We want all of our kids to have those opportunities. This is really continuing the facility work that we've had a lot of discussion on. A lot of our middle schools are some of our elder buildings, I don't know the right word, aging facilities. And I have to say, we're in a district where our operations team, whether that's facilities, technology, they prioritize academic needs first. So continuing to work on what can we do in those spaces to make people feel valued that we have done this work. When we put in the new furniture at Madison, the reaction from the kids was just incredible. And so really continuing that, no, you're our number one, we've got you. And so I want to quickly address some phase 2 recommendations, and these would begin in as early as school year 25. Again, knowing that we recognize the district's in transition, and we don't want to overstate the priority sequencing for the board. And so we definitely want to look at the schedule. What we want to look at is 6 periods better, teachers doing 5 out of 6. Are there block options that are better? What are some options that make sense for what we know about kids, what we know about our teachers who are teaching 6 out of 7 in a middle school, I would dare say is more difficult than anything else. And what can we look at to do that? We have lots of different analyses. Sherry's led a team with the principals and some potential recommendations that we can kind of bring out at any point in time, but we felt like a major change like that would be appropriate for when the new superintendent comes in. Again, homeroom we think is important, a place for, Chris, what do you call that happy morning time? What word did you use? Smart Start. Thank you. From our elementary friends, we learned the concept of Smart Start. Taking a few minutes every day in terms of getting sort of baggage out of the way, mindset. Our great teachers do it now, right? They give kids a moment to get settled and address any lingering issues, having a smart start to the day. And then obviously we want teachers to not have any burden of that and bring together some curriculum writing for them. We want to talk about how can we use exploratory wheel or semesters or different configurations to give kids maximum exposure to different programs, right? Different ways, and not necessarily having to have a full year commitment. Maybe they try music for 9 weeks or chorus for 9 weeks or different things like that so they can dabble and find their space. And school counselor allocation. This is probably the greatest problem I'm going to use. Mira Trine as an example over here for Jefferson Middle School. Our formula right now is up to 637 kids in a middle school. You have the one counselor.
Yes, sir.
And that includes, they do ESC, they do MTSS, they do ESOL, they do everything, up to 637 kids. Miss Trine's school is one that's been coming in around 610. And by the blessing of ESSER, we've been able to support that second counselor. Our elementary schools, take a look at that allocation, 1 to 750 in elementary. So we recommended some modest improvements, obviously not necessarily best practices, but we really think we've got to tackle that school counselor allocation to at least improve where we're at, not, we know that ideal is another thing, but we've really got to prove it. The kids in that age band are so high need and so emotionally driven, and our resources are so dramatically low to where nearly all of our schools, there's only one allocation, and they're having to do so much technical work that other work gets left behind. So we think that is very important. And we want to continue work evaluating the exam policy and overall grading expectations. You saw that in those other slides. So these are things, they're not off the hook. So this wasn't their last meeting. We still have more meetings scheduled. But continuing really into this next year on tackling some other topics. And again, the team has just been joy. This is them at the American Middle Level Educators Conference. Being able to have the blessing of them all together, visiting best practices from all over the country was just incredible. I'm really proud of them. And any of them, or I can answer any lingering questions.
It's great. Thank you so much. Lot to take in, but I'm going to give my fellow board members, I see that Ms. Campbell has about 3 pages of notes over here. I just wanted to give them the opportunity to speak, so I usually turn this way. Ms. Jenkins, did you want to go first?
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan, and everyone involved. Your slide about it depends, the big X through it, I really appreciate that, because at a time when we are continuously talking about school choice, yes, it's wonderful that we want to give people the opportunity to make choices, but I've always argued that you shouldn't have to make a choice. You shouldn't feel that you have to make a choice, that your local community school should have a standard level of opportunity and operation in order to level the playing field. Obviously, we have special CTE programs that we can't have at every single school, but when it comes to that basic curriculum and access to those resources, we need to put our feet to the ground and ensure that we're doing that for every one of our students. And of course, we have amazing leaders out there within BPS, and it's wonderful that we're able to collaborate with them and identify those things that are really, really working and ensure that we're going to make that go equitably across the field. So I really appreciate that being a focus. I really appreciate you talking about the importance of the environment. We know that as educators that dramatically impacts the performance of our students, and we want our environment to be a reflection of what you desire and the outcome that you hope for our students. And so when you talk about a static environment versus an innovative and collaborative environment, you're going to get what you're putting in there. So hats off to that concept. And it makes me think about my first visit to the media center at Palm Bay High School. And that media center is kind of reflective of what a kid might see when they go to college. And it just makes it more collaborative and inviting and makes students want to be in that space. And so we want to see that within our classrooms as well. The concepts of teams, not only academically, but I think when, we've obviously seen that, the discipline rates for our students in middle school are significantly higher than some of our other grade levels. It's important for those teachers that are working with that difficult student to be able to come together and tackle how they can deal with those behaviors together. Because otherwise what you've got, and unfortunately what we have, and it's no fault of our teachers, but they're so busy, they're so burnt out. This kid is struggling in every single classroom typically. Or every single class. They're not struggling just in the one class period. And so the student is coming across a different teacher every single period who's going to handle that behavior differently. And we're expecting this 13, 14-year-old to be able to respond to that constantly changing environment and set of rules. And we're just basically setting them up for failure. So I think it's better for our teachers and our students to keep that focus. Thank you for changing the school counselor ratio. Definitely not.
Changed it.
Well, recommending. Sorry. It's obviously not the ideal, right? We want 1 in 250 like we're supposed to have, but I understand how unrealistic that is, not only in staffing and finances. But I think it's something that we've discussed as a board previously and I want to keep a focus of is because it's borderline impossible to get to that ideal number, we need to make changes in job description and expectation of those staff members and those counselors so that they don't have all of this other additional duties or other work that they're usually tasked with, so they can spend more time in those classrooms and making those relationships with those students.
We do have a project team working on that separately.
Yeah. Awesome. So thank you, everybody. And then I did want to ask this question, and I think I know the answer, but I just want to throw it out there. When you were proposing, not changing, looking at schedules differently, you know, one of the questions I have, and of course, I didn't get feedback from every single middle school teacher when this was happening, but during COVID, when we had that block scheduling, I felt like there was a lot of positive reactions in some of our schools in terms of academic performance of our students going up and then the discipline going down. And so I'd be curious to see, and I know you probably do because you're the data queen, the data on that. And I think you probably presented to us like a year ago at this point, but just to take a look at that again.
Yeah, and I would say the feedback is about as split as it can get. On our survey online, we ask about that, and it is a love it, hate it. And people feel very strongly about loving it and very strongly about hating it. We feel strongly about that we need something different, right? So we're not strongly at which that different is. We're going to keep walking out. We need a lot more stakeholder work just on scheduling. But I don't know if any of the principals want to comment on the differences that you saw, Ms. Trine. Do you want to take that one? Yeah. Ms. DeLauder, do you want to add to that? We're looking at some hybrids. Mr. Corso?
And we talked a lot about theory, about what schedules could look like. We'd love to go to other schools that are doing it well and seeing what they're doing and how they, tackle different types of schedules.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm ready.
All right, Ms. Jenkins, are you good?
Yeah.
Okay, Ms. Campbell?
Well, first of all, I have to totally agree that middle school is awesome. Middle school is my jam. And even though it's been almost 19 years since I was a middle school teacher, I still, when I go sub, I may have a preference. I may be in my, even though I only have 2 middle schools, I'm probably in my middle schools more than I am in my high schools and elementary schools because, that's my favorite. But they are very special. And the people who work, I remember all the years that I did work as a middle school teacher, people say, what do you do? I'm a middle school teacher. Oh, God bless you. Right? Right. If you've heard it once, you've heard it, 100 times. But this is really important work. It's really important work. The data shows it to be important work. We have to prioritize. So I'm so thankful for the work that all of you have done. I know we didn't have a room full of people to applaud you, but after she did the introduction screen, I just wanted us to all, applaud the team. I liken it to like when you have a newborn and you swaddle them so they feel secure, right? Elementary is kind of like the swaddling. And when you get them out of the swaddling, you don't just put them in the crib one day completely unwrapped because then they're flailing. That's kind of what middle school feels like. And, I'm in my last year of middle school as a parent, but I will be sad because like I said, that's one of my favorite schools to be a part of. But having my kids going through this process, I have seen these up close with the gifted, with the kids with the IEP, ones in music, the ones in sports, the ones who made it look easy, and the one where I hope this is my last year as a middle school parent. But so this is really important work. I thank you for showing us the Youth Truth data. There's been a lot of conflict about Youth Truth data. I think it was important for the community to see this is one of the ways that we're using it, and it's really important information for us to have. I have a few concerns. We talked about more electives. I want to see the data. This is heart reaction, not data reaction, because I haven't seen it. But one of the things that we do for kids who make a 1 or a 2 on their FSA is we put them in. You guys know where I'm going with this, where you put them in an intensive reading class or we put them in an instructional strategies class and they lose an elective. And I can't tell you how many times as a sub, either working as a sub or as a school board member filling in as a sub, in those types of classes, I've just seen the defeat and the behavior issues. And I can't help but think that that is a drain on a student's motivation to be there. And I know they need that. They need that extra support. And it's not a downer on the teacher who teach those classes, but kids are losing the opportunity to be in band, sometimes PE, which that's a worst nightmare for a kid who really needs a fidget. You just put them in another academic class. As you guys are working through that, as a parent, that bothers me because the classes, like the music classes, the CTE classes, those are the things that provide kids motivation for being there, that sense of belonging. And of course, I was a music teacher, so I kind of have a bent towards that. But I will tell you another concern I have is about the wheel idea. I love the wheel idea for the kids who are out there and like, I don't really know what I want to do. But as a music teacher, I know that those, to me, if the kids already know that what they want to do, again, music, band, art, not just music, band, art, chorus, but also drama and art, those kinds of things, they provide such that sense of belonging. My personal opinion, if every middle schooler was in a music class, they would have a different culture. I'm not suggesting that, but there is something about that. So I don't want anything that we do with the wheel ideas to take away from the success that students are already finding because they find that sense of belonging and that motivation to be in school. That kind of ties together with the intensive reading concern.
Typically in those situations, there would be, let's say I'm a music teacher, there would be 1, maybe 2 periods that are on a wheel.
Okay.
That are for exploratory for those 7th grade kids. The rest of their classes are their traditional.
Yeah.
Right? So typically what we see, we did it for a long time in this district. When I started as a teacher a while ago, it's complementary to the programs and in
Right.
fact creates a
Recruitment.
stronger feeder pull. So it is definitely not in lieu of.
Right. No, I
Yeah.
hear you. I hear you. And it definitely, that kind of participatory class would be better than sometimes we'll have like what it's called like a music exploration class, but it's not fun. I did a 9 weeks of subbing in a class like that, and it was not fun. I'll just leave it at that. Because it's a class that kids get stuck in. And any class that kids get stuck in, it's just a recipe for behavior issues. I just want to recognize the responsibility that so much of this puts on our principals because that culture point, that lies on you guys. And getting the buy-in, not just from the students, but from the staff is so important. And because you can go in there and unilaterally make changes. We're going to do this.
No.
Yeah, please don't. But I know you guys, you recognize that. And it takes some time for buy-in. So there's a lot of cheerleading that has to go on. And I just want to recognize that weight of that responsibility. And to be a cheerleader, sometimes we don't feel like a cheerleader. Issue about focus. Focus is so important. It's a powerful tool. I will tell you, as a middle school parent, one of my frustrations has been every single teacher uses it a different way.
Yep.
And some use Google. So when my middle school son, I talk about him more because my girls are like, do you have homework? And they just did it. I didn't even have to ask him, right? This is different for me, but every teacher does it differently. Some use Google Classroom to find their homework. Some use Focus to find their homework. Some they write it in their planner to find their homework. And as a parent, I'm having to say, look in all the places, look in all the things. And sometimes I'm still not finding it. So that consistency is really important on the school side so that parents can, because if I really wanted to get frustrated, like I'm just not looking at anything because I can't find it. So that's, I don't want parents to get discouraged. I love the campus monitor idea. We've had that conversation before, you and I have, and I think that would be really great to start it here with our middle schools because of the building relationships with another trusted person on campus to just be eyes and ears. And just throwing this out there for the block schedule idea, one of the places where I taught you guys are look at that in the future. It was an AB block, but it was a unique AB block where we had what we called a constant period. And so the middle period of the day, every day was the same period. So you really still only had 7 classes. But what it did was it created at the end of the day like a 30-minute, and it could be at the beginning, it could be at the end, it didn't matter. But a 30-minute also, I can't remember what we called it now, but where I could pull kids in for a choir rehearsal, kids could go to tutoring, whatever, we could use that time. I don't even know if that school district still uses anymore, but it was helpful. Except that constant period, I had the ISS room, so I had 90 minutes of ISS every day. But other than that, I really enjoyed that schedule. So just throwing that out there as an option. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell.
Mr. Trent.
Okay. Well, thank you for all the work that you guys have been putting in. Wow, I don't envy your job on this, but I'm glad you stepped forward. You're the experts. You're the ones that are out there. So, and thank you for putting it together, Dr. Sullivan, and presenting it to us. I've been through the middle school experience as a parent 4 times. I have 5. And I'm waiting to enter that with my 5th grade girl. That'll be interesting. It'll be the first girl through the middle school. I think middle school starts with females and girls probably at 3rd grade compared to the boys. That's what I'm learning as on the parenting end of it. So, and I've also been through it on the teaching end of it. And I have some people out there that was there. So it is, you know, I look at myself as I subbed for 2.5 years in the middle school, even though I was teaching. It is definitely an experience. I'm a high school teacher by trade. I envy anyone who sticks it out in middle school. It's a different set of, it's a skill set by you teachers. So thank you so much for doing that. I completely am just going to, we could sit here all day of what I think could and couldn't work, but again, I just can't wait to just keep getting the feedback, and you guys are doing it, so I look forward to that. On the counseling end of things, I might have missed it. I think it was Ms. Jenkins that mentioned 250, but what is best practices? Is there a national organization that says it needs a counselor per student? Is what?
There is. There is a national organization. We're putting together for the board information on that, and around 250 is indeed the sweet spot. You know, that would be incredibly difficult just in terms of capacity.
Right.
And so what we sometimes look at is how can we complement the guidance team to where the guidance counselors that are there are better supported. Sometimes it's clerical, right? So sometimes the solution when there's a dearth of certified teachers is what can we do differently? And so we're looking at what can we do in terms of clerical support and additional support. We do want to lower it a little to where a school with 600 plus doesn't have one counselor. Also, what team can we provide those counselors to help with the work that doesn't require their very special talent? I don't need them at a copy machine, right?
Right.
So we're looking to balance what we realistically can get. We have the ability to look at the number of people in the state that are certified in an area, and there's not enough certified people in the state. So how do we tackle the problem instead of just giving up and say, what other supports can we give our counselors? So we've got a little project team working on that right now and evaluating the national standards against what we realistically think we can do to help our counselors.
That's good to hear. I spent my last few years in the guidance area as a testing coordinator, and they need help.
Yeah.
They're dying. They're professional pencil pushers, and they just feel, many of them they feel sad because you don't become a counselor unless you're really wanting to help students, and they're just hand-tied.
Well, example is the counselor on the team couldn't get away today. So
Right.
that's a living example, yeah.
And just like we have bus drivers and teachers and IAs that are looking for other avenues because they're not able to do the things that they're hired to do, counselors are doing the same things, and they are leaving, and we need their help.
Yeah, through one of our grants, we piloted guidance IAs, particularly MTSS IAs. We've got them at 10 elementary schools and 1 high school right now to actually support the guidance team on data gathering and all those related services. And those that have them know that they've become an invaluable member of the team, and we can train them in skills to take some of those like logistical things off the counselors.
Right. Thank you so much for that. And I'll be the big campus monitor support person. They have done amazing things. I've spent some time at Cocoa Beach, and we have a campus monitor there, and I can't imagine not having a campus without one. So we have we've used him to the fullest, and I can see the advantages there. So again, thank you everyone that is on that team, and we look forward to implementing some of these recommendations. Thank you.
Ms. Wright.
All right. I am so glad that we're having this conversation right now about reimagining middle schools, because honestly, when I think of this idea that we expect every student to arrive at school at the same time, learn the same things, we test in the same way, and all of our students aren't going to be the same thing in life. And so this idea of reimagining middle schools, I think, is very appropriate right now, especially in light of legislation that's changing that's going to give more choices to parents. So I'm excited about this opportunity. I think this is a really good opportunity for us to do some amazing things. Thank you to this team. You guys are rock stars, so we appreciate you tremendously. There's a few things that I wrote notes here for, and some of them are questions, some of them are just things that I want to kind of talk about. Miss Campbell, I think, referred to focus. Focus is one of those things that, like she said, is used so differently. I think it would be very beneficial if we looked at maybe even having a focus representative come in and maybe walk us through how to tap into all the potential that focus has, even from the discipline aspect of things, because I have heard that there are certain things that focus can grab and maybe help us track a little better when it comes to discipline as well. So I think if we had a uniform standard that we expected from our schools, that would help parents. I am one of those parents like you that has had different experiences depending on which child it is, which teacher it is when it comes to focus, and so that would be beneficial. One of the other things, I love the idea of these teaching teams, and I actually, when I go to my schools, I see the benefit of this, and this is tremendous to have a team that you kind of, you're there together, you're in the trenches together, and you guys are finding solutions to the problems you have. One of the things that I just hope that we as a district make sure we do is we keep our teams together. We don't want to break up a team that's working and doing a good job, because some of our teams have been together for a long time, and so we want to make sure that we keep them where they're at and they're thriving. The service learning, I wanted to ask, I think it was Miss Kathy, right, from Hoover, does every one of the kids take a service learning class, or is this an elective that they participate in?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this idea, because honestly, I think that really gets buy-in from the children to be able to say, hey, this is my school, this is my community, I have a voice here, I have a part and a role to play, and so I love, love, love that. I love the campus monitors. I think that's something that we definitely need to put in place. One of the common things I hear is that our hot spots, our issue areas, are our bathrooms. That's like a constant every school, and now it's even happening in an elementary level, which is odd because they have bathrooms in their pods, but it's still, it's an area that needs constant monitoring. So campus monitors are tremendous there. I'm a huge advocate for that. I like the block scheduling, and I know this is one of those 50-50. You love it or you hate it, but I think one of the hard things that we see for kids coming from elementary school is that they've spent years and years and years in the same school, right? So they know the staff, they know their librarian, they know their front desk clerk, they know their nurse, they know these people, and they're familiar faces. But now they go into a middle school and they're changing class periods. It's a whole new, now you have a bunch of schools coming together, so you don't know everybody that's there. So I think the block scheduling gives some stability to the fact that there's more time in that class with those educators. I like the block scheduling mentality. I think it's a good transition, especially if they're going from not necessarily changing classes. I know they sort of do in 5th and 6th grade. It's a little different at each school. But I think it gives a good transition into high school. So it's something I think we should look at exploring. And I just thank you guys. You guys are doing amazing work, and middle school is a specialty by all means, and that's really when kids are really deciding which path they're going to take, and they're trying to figure out who they are. So it truly is a calling, and I'm grateful to you guys for being invested there. It's amazing that we have so many great people in Brevard County, so thank you for all you do.
One of the things about being chair is by the time you get to go, everybody's already talked about everything. No, I have to speak. So anyways, I just wanted to say thank you for everything that you guys do. I really appreciate it. There was a time period when I heard you guys were meeting, and I kept trying to go meet with you guys and say, look, this is what we need to do, right? And I get told by everybody, you can't go in there, you can't. So I've been waiting. No, because I have a tendency to just start like throwing stuff around and everything else. So I was told to just wait, and I've been waiting for this moment, and I can't be happier. What you guys have put forward, literally, like, I am so excited. There maybe not be another as excited moment inside of school board as I am right now with you guys, because of all the student congress, service learning, block scheduling. I mean, these were all things that I did when I was teaching, and I know them very well, and I know how much they impact students. So I wanted to say thank you. There was one thing as I was waiting, as you were going like 24, 25, I was waiting, when is football going to be showing up on this thing? I said, wait. So I had said that, you had said that there's like sort of a supplement, like we got to look at athletics from a larger perspective of feeding and all that other stuff. So just out of ideas, is
Yeah,
it possible that we could do something in
One
25?
of, yeah.
I
for
want my
sure.
daughter to be a
So one
kicker,
of
that's why.
We had hoped last year to be our trial year for the other intramurals, so
Yeah.
volleyball and soccer. Supply chain, logistical woes. So the principals, one of the things they sort of universally felt was like, give us a minute, let's see how this works, and let's see where the demand is next. So for school year 24, I didn't have it on the slide, honestly, because it's operational.
Yeah.
We're ready to go. I think Ms. Vega is been at the warehouse, getting the equipment shipped. So our number one priority is adding that, and then seeing what that garners, and then looking at, again, our sixth grade.
Sure.
I can't emphasize it enough for the elementary representatives on the team. We are doing parallel work to really create an identity in that, almost like, and you know, when we talked about branding, when you walk into this hallway, looks different, the signs are different, that it is part of, you know, you're entering middle school, and we want to add it there too. So absolutely on the table. I happen, you know, to know someone over athletics right now, and so we will definitely look it out. We just have to be careful because capacity of
I
our
know.
schools as well. We want to be super mindful.
We don't have a fields at the middle school either, so it's kind of difficult. I get it, but
We
I
have
was just,
soccer fields.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you
and
know, yeah.
so we want to walk out more activities for sure. And so
and then, do you have a volleyball program at Jefferson? There was a couple of volleyball programs that came up this year. I had just gotten a slew of requests that they play each other in some kind of a thing at the end of the year. Is that something we can pull off?
So we have, we have our basketball where we have boys and girls and our cheering in the fall. And then we have our track programs, our driving here in the spring. The plan was to have volleyball and soccer. We never got the equipment. So some schools, it depends, did soccer because they had some soccer equipment. Some schools had some volleyball nets, so they tried to do volleyball. But I don't think we really gave it
Yeah.
the
No, it's understandable. I just,
next year, if we have all that, we'll have a definite winter volleyball and soccer intramural program that maybe we could do like at the end, you do like a neighboring school, you play them, or you do like a tournament at the end. So you have some, inter-school
They-
competition. Basically,
they're talking right now. Their season is ending like right now. Well, and basketball's getting ready to start. But I got
track ends in 2 weeks.
volleyball is ending. So some schools have it, and they're requesting to play each other. But they're requesting right now to play each other.
Yeah,
Can we pull this
so
off, Dr. Sullivan?
I know nothing of these words you speak, but like you said, it's been about a week since athletics has been under me. But I can certainly find out.
Let's-
I think, again, we were picturing tournament style, like at
Yeah.
the end, and like an all-day kind of Saturday tournament style, which would
Yeah.
decrease the burden on transportation and other resources. I don't know if you want me to ask if other schools are doing it, because I don't know if we want that answer. So
I'll give them with you. I'll show you the ones that want to.
Absolutely.
Maybe we can pull something together.
Yep.
I did want to tell everybody that this is a unique factor that not many people talk about, but all of our school board members actually have children that are inside of the schools. And that's the first time in Brevard County history as far as school board members that you do. So you have a unique, good opportunity that we know kind of what's going on, and the bad one that we have our kids inside the schools. So I wanted to tell you from the bottom of our heart that comes from a good place. I do the hands-on projects that they spoke to. So I had an opportunity when I was approached in 2006 to bring on that was FCATs, and they had some kids that were really bad at FCAT, and there was a math piece, and I can't remember what it was. It was in like 9th or 10th grade, and the spinner at the time asked me, he says, can you put together a hands-on project, teach these kids as a mentor and stuff like that? So I looked up in Japan where they do these project-based learning where they just literally will throw together like a trebuchet is what I used, and they just throw the wood out there, and the kids build it and all that stuff, and then we launched pumpkins out at the baseball field. And literally, the kids, the whole process of learning how to do that and everything else, these kids became geniuses, scored 5s on the FCATs at the time. And it was just one of those things that these kids were level 1s, but because they got that hands-on. So I really applaud you going in that direction because I know how much that means. The other thing is the block scheduling. I couldn't agree with you more. I actually taught block at Space Coast. Here's my experience. Block scheduling as a roaming teacher with 39 kids teaching American history for an hour and a half in somebody else's classroom. And it was the best class in the world. I still talk to those kids every day. And as long as you know how to engage it and you're given the proper procedures of how to do that, it's very successful. And I applaud you, Ms. Wright, for talking about the transition from elementary to middle school and having that as part of that. I know that my other daughter, when she was in Fairfax, Virginia, she was on a multi-block scheduling. So some classes like science, where they have the lab, were available to be on block, whereas other ones that you may not want to. So those might be some opportunities to give us some great things. I think that that's awesome. But I do want to say, as the other 50%, it was tough in the beginning, but I was able to get through it because I had some great mentor teachers, and I think that that was something to look at, and I wanted to reemphasize that. Service learning, I also taught that. It was a dump class, so we got all the kids that literally had nowhere else to go, that were discipline issues. Spinner put them in one room, and then he made me teach the class in my first year, right? So here I was with this service learning class, trying to engage them all, and what ended up happening is they became the best service learners. So when you had said that you moved away from that higher tier individuals to allowing the other kids, some of these kids, from the bottom of their heart, would love to give, even though they don't have the GPAs. And what ends up happening is you watch what they do is astronomically past what you would normally see out of some of the other children. So I wanted to say, if there's anything in that realm of allowing those students to do that, that's a great thing, and thank you so much for that. Let me just do this. I have all of these written. I was so excited to move through this thing. I honestly couldn't stop. But I did just want to say, I'm literally so excited about what you guys are doing. The Congress and the service learning, the Congress, we have Model Student Senate that every year they come here and they compete. Like, I was one of those instructors when I was doing it. I would love that when you guys put this together next year to have the students come here, because I would love them to feel a part of our governing system too. And some other things, but I would love to see that kind of stuff. So applaud everything you guys are doing. Thank you very much. Can I go to some of the meetings now? Because you guys actually have like a plan. You actually have a plan now, so I can't like interrupt
Anyone's
it.
welcome, and I have to say to the participants that have from the community, have just popped in on our meetings, they've been invaluable. So we really appreciate that. I do have to take this chance to make one last plug. On May 1st, we're going to roll out our summer enrichment programs, and they are plentiful and just amazing. The ones in our middle schools will serve incoming 7th graders. So it's a great opportunity for the students to get to know the campus. We are doing everything from lifeguarding to scuba diving to ceramics to we're running comprehensive STEM program. Yeah, we've got it
Like
all.
getting their licenses, scuba diving?
Correct. They would actually get their official license.
Well, where are we doing this at?
Rockledge
the
High
pool?
Mitzi. Yes, in the pool. Our swim coach there is Olympian. She's pretty amazing. So she's running programs all summer long. From the north area, we're running middle school STEM immersive programs that include field trips to the Space Center, Orlando Science Center, Mosey Science Center, and we're running them out of Madison, Cocoa, Stone, and Southwest. Just extensive programming, all free to our families. And so we really hope that our families take advantage of it again. Students can learn to play guitar, just anything that you can imagine. Our amazing teachers are offering. We're offering our first, our amazing teacher at Southwest is teaching students sort of layman auto mechanics, oil changes, all that kind of stuff. So on May 1st, the sign up will be out, and so just really encourage our community, especially in this space for our 6th graders to take programs in 7th grade. Our 4 STEM classes are actually going to have rising 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. So lots of opportunities there, busings included, foods including, all kinds of stuff. So it's coming soon.
I just have to say, you and the team have squeezed every last dollar out of this ESSER money
Yes, we
in
have.
such great ways. And we continue to be creatively squeezing every last penny. And so great job on
this team, but also the ESSER team, because
It's a pretty great team.
yes, it was a blessing to have it, but you guys are using it in such strategic ways, and I very much appreciate
And we're
that.
doing middle school musical theater, one at Cocoa Beach and one at Melbourne. And those are rising young ones too, so lots of cool stuff coming.
My daughter's actually going from 6th to 7th grade this year.
I have one going from.
Lots of opportunities, they're all coming. So May 1st, we'll be working with Government and Community Relations to blast out all the registration links.
Yeah, I'm laughing right now because I'm looking over at Russ, and he had said that he wanted to put like a press release out about what we're doing right now. And I'm trying to figure out how the heck he's going to do that in the short, like, what do you do, like 400 words? Because there's so much stuff here that it's going to be be so I'm really
He can
excited
handle
to
it.
this. Yeah.
Thank you
right,
all
thank
very
you.
much. Thank you for your
I
time.
have
Did
one
you-
more thing I
Oh,
need to
yes.
say.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh.
I will punch myself if I forget to say this, and I apologize. It's ridiculous that I forgot to bring this up, but I didn't flip the page. One of the things that I care so passionately about, and it's on the presentation, but I feel the need to make the pitch. And I know that Mr. Brown is on the team, so we've got the best of the best when it comes to this. But one of the areas that I am deeply concerned about is our ESC students, our students on IEPs and 504s, how drastically different their experiences and their support is when they go from elementary school to middle school. It is wildly different. And for some of our students with significant needs, it's borderline deficient. And so I know that that's something we're considering. You were talking about it in the presentation, but I hope that we continue to make that a priority and a focus for our students, as well as focusing on the families and having them understand that transition of what their students and what they can expect their students are going to get when they get into middle school, because some of them don't understand that there is a significant difference there. And so, thank you. Sorry.
Yes, no, thank you, absolutely.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. I've a couple of the board members have said that they don't mind to keep going, but I was going to give the opportunity for us to take a 5-minute break if you needed to. If you guys are okay, we can keep moving.
Yeah, we need to go because we only got an hour and a half.
Let's go. Let's roll. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you so much for your dedication. We really appreciate it. Now, moving back, that concludes the Reimagining Task Force update. The next topic is Transportation Incentive Proposal. Are we ready for that?
Yes, sir, we are ready.
Is Dr. Miller proposing this? What is he doing?
I'm going to go over this very briefly. Dr. Miller, Mr. Wilson, Fuzzy, and Dr. Green, if we need some support. But I just want to say I appreciate a little additional time to work through this and feel like we've come to a very good place. And so what you have on your agenda for discussion today is, in summary, we're looking at a $25 per run for carrying extra students to a split bus route. We're looking for, we're asking for $25 for all drivers having to double back for any uncovered routes after their first route has been completed. We are proposing $25 per run for routing dispatch and assistant supervisors when they are required to drive. And we are proposing an incentive of $2,500 for mechanics, assistant foreman, and foreman. And this entire package can be covered through ESSER. So Ms. Campbell mentioned the good work done by the ESSER team, and we can cover it through ESSER. We've worked with Dr. Sullivan's team. This has truly been a cross-functional project. I believe we had almost every cabinet member, with the exception of the Leading and Learning team, in the room talking about how to execute this proposal. And I feel very comfortable proposing this for your consideration. If you would like us to move forward with this, we do have it on the board agenda tonight so that it can be acted upon. In this way, it gets started in our system. Our goal is, if it's approved this evening, those drivers taking on additional routes starting tomorrow, they would see that in their April 28th paycheck. The retro pay will be May 30th.
Perfect explanation. I would ask if the board would, we can discuss this now, or we can wait until tonight when everybody's there and a lot of the bus drivers are going to be there and stuff like that. So whatever you guys want to do.
I would suggest that we talk about it now and go ahead and give our direction.
I
And we
think-
can talk about it tonight too, but I
think we're all-
mean, she's asking for us direction so we can put
That's
it on
what-
the agenda.
I was saying we could give direction, but the deep dive discussion and the, you know what I mean, those kind of conversations we might be able to do tonight. But, all right, so Ms. Campbell, go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate this. I think this is one of those situations where I'm glad we had ESSER, because reading the documents that you sent us today or yesterday, it looks like we didn't have as much
in the kitty as we thought we did. And so I appreciate that we found a way, the staff found a way, not we, as a district, we found a way to make it happen. Just to clarify, so I know you guys have been in contact with the 1010 union, so this is not something that has to be right, but we can just, because they've already given their approval, we can move it on through. Okay. Okay. So because otherwise we can't get it done by April 28th if we have to do it in a more complicated way. So I appreciate that. No, I am in support of the plan that you guys have created, and I appreciate it very much.
Ms. Jenkins?
Yeah, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Ms. Campbell basically asked what I was going to ask, making sure that 1010 was a part of this. And, you know, when this is articulated tonight, I think it would be helpful to make that very clear that those conversations were had.
Mr. Trent?
No need to take any extra time. No,
Good.
We're good. Thank you for all the work on that.
Ms. Wright?
All right, I am wearing, I don't know if you can see these or not, but
You're wearing bus driver.
I am wearing bus driver earrings today. They have buses on them. I just want to say thank you to this team, because let me tell you, since January, when Mr. Wilson and I started our tours, boy, did we just start them, right? I'm like, this was I didn't know what we were getting into when we started this, but we started going and looking at these depots and talking to our drivers and our staff, and it was very apparent something had to be done, and it had to be done immediately, and here we are in April. I mean, this is, I guess, immediate in government timeline terms. But I just want to thank you guys for the support on this one. This one will be a huge win. I think our drivers will be very appreciative. This is a thank you for them picking up where we needed them, and they stepped in and they went above and beyond. And the same thing with our mechanics. So we need to make sure that the people that we have in place understand that we appreciate them, that we see you working these double backs, these triple backs, working the extra hours, and we appreciate you guys tremendously. So I am very excited about this. That's all I'll say. I'm wearing these bus driver earrings in hopes that this gets across tonight. So
Yeah, and I'll speak some more tonight about it. But one of the things I agree, concur, moving forward, something to think about since scheduling is a thing. I think this is massive, what we're doing here. This is going to be a huge opportunity, and a lot of the credit goes to some of the board members here and everything else. But Dr. Miller, if it's okay with you, I may want to come up and cheer the bus drivers on tomorrow morning. I may go to one of these places, you know what I mean? We can kind of divide it up if we have the scheduling, but it would be nice for us to send this message out. Brune files the you know what I mean, the press release,
Yeah.
and then we show up and say thank you. Because I think that what you've gone through and what you're continuing to go through is absolutely beyond what you ever thought you would do. And I think that this is all on your backs, and I wanted to say thank you. So, you know, we'll try to do something like that. But I think you got your direction, and we're ready to go. Okay, Ms. Wright, you had something to say. Go ahead. I know
wanna
you're
say-
excited about this. I got a
know,
whole
I know.
thing for you
I
later
know,
on
I'm like,
tonight.
all right, I want to
yeah.
say one more thing. This is a temporary fix to a problem that is not going away. I don't think that we will see the shortage of bus drivers be resolved until we take our minimum pay rate, our starting pay rate up significantly. So I'm just putting that on the record. Board, be aware of it. That's something that we're going to have to make sure we allocate appropriately for, because when I look around the state, Brevard County is pretty low in their hourly rate. So.
And I was looking at that as a conversation for Ms. Han is that we may want to have those conversations prior to people leaving so that they know that we appreciate them before they go. And that message goes out that this is what you will be getting. So go ahead.
Just to highlight too, that this proposal takes us from January through the end of our
Right.
school year. This is not next fiscal year's proposal, so we're going to need to talk about that
Yeah.
as part of
Yeah.
the budget development.
Yeah.
So yes, thank you for bringing that up.
That's awesome. So without any more further discussion on the transportation initiative, thank you, Dr. Miller, for coming today. I appreciate it. The next one we have is conscious discipline proposal. I think we have our esteemed former principal of Ralph Williams. So come on up, man.
And Endeavor.
I remember when you decided to move to Endeavor and the heck that I dealt with inside my school, inside that Vieira East community, which we'll hear a couple from them later on tonight over this middle school thing. But like, you were like, I thought, it was like my first year, and he was like the greatest, "Hey, we can't leave him, he's so amazing." Like, I was like, who is this guy? Anyways, go ahead.
All right. Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Han, and members of the board, for this chance to share some important information about the work we've been doing in conscious discipline. My name's Chris Reed. I'm one of the directors in Student Services, and I get to share the great work that we've done over the last couple of years. I bring with me Kathleen Erdman, who's been my sidekick in this adventure here, that's been assisting me in this important work. And this information hopefully is to help you be armed with information for the proposal that we're looking to move forward with at the board meeting tonight for the 225 people to attend an academy this summer, June 5th through June 8th. So first, I want to share a little timeline of our initiative with Conscious Discipline. And it started before I was on this team back in 2019, the 1920 school year. And a team was put together due to a grant being awarded. And that team started to think about what could this look like and what should this look like across our county at an elementary level, a middle school level, or potentially a high school level. It was decided to focus on that pre-K through 2 world. But then that wonderful thing called COVID kind of set in when we made some marching orders and had some action plans. So the great plans of 1920 turned into a shift, and we were not allowed to deliver live professional development in that year, 2021. And what we did with the vendor is ask that they provide us some video PDs. And those video PDs, being a principal that lived through those videos, were not the best alternative, but it was the only alternative that we had. We did the best work that we could do with them, but it did leave what I would say, and a lot of my peers, a bad taste in their mouth. Okay, it was a painful process to go through the videos, although they were very accurate, but they were lacking that engagement that you need from that charismatic teacher, that educator, that great training that you would have. So the 1920 year, we did the best that we could, or the 2021 year, we did the best that we could, but I myself came to Chris Moore at the Times office and sat down as a principal and said, I need to talk to you about this process right now. And I gave her some real feedback. I said, this is what's working, this is what's not working, these are some suggested changes to make. And lo and behold, I joined this team on 21-22 partway through that school year. And I got the opportunity to lead this initiative. One thing that we shifted in that 21-20 school year is we shifted from the virtual presentation of information to the in-person. So we recruited got recruited volunteers for what we describe as 8 anchor schools. And that 21-22 school year, we provided 8 anchor sites with some intensive training and coaching live and in person. And we started to see a dramatic shift. Now, I also got to be one of those lucky principals because I weaseled my way onto that 8-person committee and got to see firsthand the benefits of that training. As that evolved, we grew and we decided to hold a summer institute last year, the first one that we had ever held, and we held it for, I believe it was 150 participants, and it was a 7-day institute in the month of June. It was highly participated and engaging, and we invited 7 new schools, or 6 at the time, which became 7, to join us for that summer work. This summer work that I'm proposing tonight is a continuation of that work. So 21-22, we invited, now we're up to 13 anchor sites. We move on to the 22-23 school year, and we begin that work again. We now have what we will refer to our Phase 1 schools, those that are just starting, and we have Phase 2 schools. Phase 2 schools are receiving a more in-depth level of coaching and training than Phase 1 as you warm up to those concepts and ideas. And again, I have been part of that team on the frustrated videos to the receiving that firsthand coaching to now helping plan the long-term implementation plan for our schools with this information. But it's definitely seen a value added with regard to providing our schools with that in-person training. We have continued to leave the resources out there for all schools, and those that are interested have sought out the information and support that we offer, but we've moved to an intensive model for those to get some firsthand in-person training is what we've learned has been the best practice. And I'll share with you some data that will help you understand why. So the first thing I want to do is share the data to show that we're moving in the right direction with this. So in our strategic plan, we outline that we want to try and limit exclusionary factors for our students, and then exclusionary factors would be suspensions both in and out of school or discipline referrals where you're removed from the classroom. Anytime, as you've heard me say, and when I talk to you about attendance, is a missed learning opportunity is a missed learning opportunity. If you're absent from school, you never get that chance again. It's also a missed teaching opportunity. So when we miss that teaching opportunity, we're fragmented now. I've got to catch student A up. I leave student B, C, and D behind because I'm having to catch that student up that was absent or missing from my class for that important instruction. When we look at this data, I needed to come up with a way to compare schools receiving that intensive coaching versus schools that were not. So as you see on the board here in the left-hand column, there are 8 schools listed on that second column. We selected 8 sister schools to pair them with, and there was only two criteria that we used. 1, they were either Title I or were not, and 2, that they had a very similar enrollment. Okay, those were the only 2 pieces that we looked at. Same size, Title I or non-Title I. I'd like to draw your attention to the columns with the arrows. As I said, in the strategic plan, we address exclusionary factors. The column under the first arrow is going to give you a percentage of students that are enrolled receiving out-of-school suspensions. Okay, so we took the number of out-of-school suspensions and divided that by student enrollment to give us a percentage or a ratio, kind of leveling the field based on the size of the school. And when you run down that column, you'll see green would be a more favorable result, orange would be a less favorable result. And you can see at times some of the conscious discipline sites in phase 2 or having a year and a half under their belt sometimes had a more favorable result, sometimes had a less favorable result. The column at the end shows office discipline referrals. Okay, same thing, it was number of office discipline referrals over student enrollment. Okay, so again, as you look at that, sometimes there was more favorable results, sometimes not as favorable. But the idea is some of the time there were more teaching opportunities and consistency for the classroom, and some of the times there were not. Off to the side, we've summarized the data by averaging it together. And you can see here that the average students at a conscious discipline anchor site in phase 2, again, this would be 1.5 years of data, had an average out-of-school suspension rate of 4.04. At a non-conscious discipline anchor site, they had an average of 5.66. So one could make a hypothesis that those schools engaging in those activities or training are excluding students less frequently. Again, you could look school by school. We provide the averages. Okay, we provide the same data on the deck for you for those office discipline referrals, and we can see that it was a more favorable result for the conscious discipline anchor sites at 13.03 comparatively to 18.03. When we moved to the phase 1 schools, there were 7 additional schools that were selected, and we followed the same procedure because measuring data across the same way is something that's important. Reminding you that these are schools that now have engaged in this practice for half of a year rather than 1.5 years. And again, same columns, same headers. We looked at OSS and office discipline referrals, again, for that inclusionary factor in our strategic plan. What you could see here, though, is the results are different. You can see that in office or out-of-school suspensions, it was higher for the sites that were current anchor sites than the existing schools, and the same for discipline referrals. One could hypothesize that they're on their way. One could hypothesize that they were confused and not sure what direction they were going at this time. But again, what I would say to you is what I have seen as a principal of a school and having the chance to meet monthly with each of these principals and guide them and coach them and support them is this is moving the needle in the right direction, and that's working towards that increasing of that school culture and hopefully decreasing exclusionary factors at our schools and not fragmenting our teaching opportunities. So a little bit first about conscious discipline, and I'm not going to give you a long background, but should we approve this academy, I'm going to invite each of you to participate at the 5 days. But first of all, what I want you to understand is conscious discipline is a practice. It's not a program, okay? It's a way of thinking. There's no books. There's no worksheets. There's no activities. It is a practice, okay? It's an understanding of how the brain works and how we deliver that to create a school culture and family. So at the top of the slide, you'll see all aspects of conscious discipline focus on creating a safe, connected environment for children to learn and practice the skills needed for healthy social, emotional, and academic development. Again, safe and connected is the hinge point of this process, but again, that healthy social and emotional piece is something that we need to be driving for. If we take a look at the triangle, you're going to see that there's 4 areas. Okay, the first is the brain states, and some of you participated in the Parent Academy that we held, and we spent a great deal of time walking you through those. And I hope that when you left that Parent Academy, you're like, wow, that's common sense, right? That's pretty easy stuff. But really, the easy things we find are sometimes the most difficult to make sense of and turn into actionable items. So with the brain states, adults learn the 3 phases in themselves as well as in children. Okay? Anyone that went to school on an educational path, one of the first classes you take is psychology, and you learn this thing called Maslow's hierarchy. And the bottom of the pyramid is, am I safe and am I fed? And if those 2 needs aren't met, nothing else happens. And so that's the foundation of this program as well, is am I in a red state, am I in a blue state, or am I in a green state? What is my current mindset as an adult or as a child? When we move to that next layer, the 7 powers of conscious adults, what we're looking for then is adults learn the 7 powers that allow us to see behavior as a missing skill. Okay? When we look at behavior as just an inconvenience, that inconvenience is going to repeatedly show itself again and again. When we look at behavior as a teachable moment, it's a cry for help for us to help arm someone with the means to handle their situation differently. In children, they only know, we refer to it as a playlist, they know what they've been explicitly taught or what's been explicitly modeled. When that's not appropriate in a school setting, in a grocery store, in a mall, we need to explicitly reteach that. So again, in this area, in the powers, we see that as a call for help or a missing skill that child may have. What we're always striving to do in an organization or in our classrooms is to have that connectedness of that feeling of that school family. And at school families where we work to build that sense of belonging. So I share at orientation on Wednesdays with our new staff is cooperation always comes on the coattails of connections. Okay, so you think about who you're most connected with in your family, with your friends. When that phone rings, you'll do anything for them. Okay, versus the person that stomps their feet and wags their fingers, you may be intimidated and do something. You may report to that individual and have to, but that's not due to that devotion or that inner desire to assist and to please them. We strive to make that connection with the work that we do with our learnings in these trainings to help get people to see that they want to cooperate. Okay, so again, our whole life is getting people to cooperate. Okay, my wife wants me to cooperate by doing my tasks that I have on a list, right? Okay, we are connected, but each and everything that we do stems from a relationship. The last piece of conscious discipline, the work that we do, is the 7 skills. And the 7 skills is what helps students with regulation. Okay, I've learned that I know how to handle myself in almost any situation. I get frustrated at times, but the younger we are, the less likely we are to know how to handle certain situations. Fight, flight, cry, flee, head down, under the covers, argue. Those are ways that are basic instincts that we have and how to handle situations. We need to teach individuals how to more appropriately handle situations, and that's what we do with the learnings that we do with this training. Over to the side, I just want to point out 2 things that, again, as I've said, it's a unique adult-first, child-second model, okay? And it increases our consciousness of how we're feeling. You've heard, I hope, before that you have the opportunity to make or break a situation with how you handle that, okay? If I'm frustrated, I am not bringing my best version to the table for our teachable moment. If I'm calm, I know I'm bringing my best version to that teachable moment. And we talked about a scenario in the Parent Academy, if you were there, about a kid running out in the road. You grab them, you bring them close, and you yell, "Don't ever do that again." The child is panicked that you grab them and you're trying to keep them safe. You were panicked they were going to have harm. They're panicked that you're yelling at them. neither one of you are ready to handle that situation at that time. So again, it's a unique adult first thing where we look at the brain states. The last piece is we ultimately look at how we move through those brain states. It's recognizing in myself when I'm not there, and it's recognizing when my students are not. And that's illustrated here in this infographic. We can describe the slide as an outline for training and PD opportunities. Training is typically divided into 3 brain states with corresponding powers, skills, and structures that help us coach kids through these brain states. So I've talked about these brain states, and some of you have seen them before, some of you haven't, so we'll talk about them briefly. There's the red state, the blue state, and the green. Red is that flight or fight mode. Blue, the largest area, is that in-between phase. And then green is where we're all at our optimum problem solving. When we look at safety, that's that fight or flight mode. Okay? I'm not ready to see or do or talk at all. In that blue state, I'm ready to talk, but it's usually not in a way that you're happy about when I respond. Okay? But in that green state, that's optimum. We spend, again, the majority of our time in that blue state. When we look at the powers and the skills in that second column, we can see that this is how we start to see conflict differently and see skills help us respond to behavior differently. Again, it's a very simple idea, but we find that when we explicitly teach these practices, the light bulb goes off. I can't tell you how many teachers have waved a book in front of me and said, I wish I had this when I was raising my kids. I would be so much better, right? I wish I had this when I was a first-year teacher. I'd be so much better. But if we take a look at this infographic again, we take a look at that safety line, we see a power is attention and the skill is assertiveness. Off to the side, we can see some of the strategies. What you focus on, you get more of, okay? That is a very important concept that we a lot of times don't. We focus on what we don't want very much so most of the time, okay? What we do want is what we want to make sure is being heard and seen on a regular basis. We want to set limits respectfully and teach modeling in an assertive voice, not a dominating voice and not a timid voice either. So don't take it from me. There's some stats here that I have for you. Conscious discipline is an evidence-based trauma-informed approach. It's recognized by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration, also the National Registry Evidence-Based Programs and Practices. Currently, conscious disciplines implemented in many counties that are on the slide for you to see. We were recently reached out to by the Patrick Space Force Base for consideration for them to find out how to access some of the training and supports for some of their child care centers. So they're hearing the work that we're doing, and there's some interest and desire. Child Trends, the nation's most respected source of research and data on children, would like to pilot conscious discipline implementation and an outcome tool in 22-23. And some other highlights, as I mentioned, in 2022, we had 150 participants at our Summer Institute for 7 days. It was over Father's Day and a Saturday and a Sunday, too. That was a commitment. We've had the 2 parent academies, and the most exciting thing that we put together this year was one of the e-courses, and to our surprise, 132 people from elementary, middle, high school, charter, all signed up for our course, and that's due to the excitement and the interest that they had. And those aren't just our anchor sites. Those are people that are seeking this information from some people that have that expertise. So that was an indicator that we are moving in the right direction, and people are out there talking about the work that we're getting done. As I mentioned, we've got Phase 2 schools, we've got Phase 1 schools. Phase 2 schools are in their second year of in-person coaching. They're listed on the left-hand side. Phase 1 schools are listed on the right-hand side. Phase 1 schools have had 1 year of intensive coaching and training, and I believe that all of your schools are represented, and I'm hopeful that you have had the chance to see some of the results of the coaching and training at some of your schools. Mr. Susan, we made you famous in our presentation here. I don't know if you remember reading a book at one of our exemplar classes at the amazing Sable Elementary. Sable Elementary is one of our Year 2 anchor sites. This was actually one of the classroom teachers that is receiving the coaching directly from our vendor and support from our team on our monthly meetings and through Ms. Erdman. What I hope you can remember is how that school family felt in that classroom, that there was that sense of respect, that sense of belonging, that sense of supporting one another in that room. A picture speaks a million words, but a video would tell even more, but I don't have that video for you to see today. But some things that you would see in this classroom that day, Mr. Susan and team, that I would like to point out is one thing that you would see here on the side that I'll elaborate on in a minute is what we call a wish well board. When students are missing from class for whatever reason that is, the students wish that individual well, not knowing why they're not there. We begin teaching the skill of empathy to students. Behind Mr. Susan on the wall up here in the corner is a commitment board. Every day the students in this make a commitment to excellence. They determine this is what I'm going to be best at today based on tomorrow or based on what my teacher's expectations are. At the back at this desk is what we call a safe place. A safe place is a place to go after we've trained students about their emotions that they can go to de-escalate themselves. It's not a timeout because we want to make sure they know how to use that space, how to recognize their feelings. We want to help them deregulate themselves before they make some poor choices. And again, part of that practice is that talk of those brain states first and arming kids with those powers and those skills. Some examples of some of the things that we learn and we put to practice in some of our schools. First of all, for safety would be what we refer to as a safekeeper ritual. We have those for both the staff and for the students. On the left is an example at Creel of a safekeeper ritual where all individuals commit to keeping all the students and staff safe at the school. In the middle, again, referring back to that Maslow's hierarchy, the first step in learning is feeling safe. All of our students each day make that commitment to being safe. You can hear things like, my job is to keep you safe. Your job is to help keep us safe in our classrooms. Again, if we're not safe, whether that be truly physically safe or being fed safe or being safe to take academic risks, we're not going to leave that bottom rung of that triangle. So it's an important piece that, again, sounds so simple, but has a very, very compounding effect throughout a student's day. And the far right, we've got an example of a safe place in a kindergarten classroom. You can see that this, again, would be where a kid could go if they were feeling emotionally charged and a place to go regulate their emotions. Again, they wouldn't go there as a timeout. They would go there because they've learned how to do that. So you can see what's referred to as some feeling buddies. There's some language that the kids can learn. I feel mad. I'm going to use the timer to deregulate so I can re-engage with the class. Okay, we teach kids how to run through some of these practices, and it's ways that they've never been armed with these tools to help regulate themselves. Okay, all our kids have that instinctive actions. It's our job to help them with home to teach them those skills that they need to regulate their emotions. Other ways we keep people safe. For years, we've been running a PBIS model where we talk about school-wide structures and routines and expectations, and we post them all around the school on posters. Well, we never thought, there's 3 or 4 grade levels in every elementary school that can't read yet, potentially, right? Okay, let's put some pictures to that. A picture speaks 1,000 words. See it, hear it, do it. Okay, so again, it's a way of helping us just open our eyes a little wider and say, we need to do a better job of communicating what those expectations are. One of my favorites are these two where the students make a commitment each day. The middle being a commitment board, an intermediate. Across the top, it says care. It says cooperate, active learner, respect and responsible, and encouraging. Every day a kid takes their little picture and determines what they're going to commit to be better at that day or they're going to be excellent at that day. Near the bottom it has I did it, so they can celebrate that they were successful in what they planned for in the morning. This is super powerful in the younger grades because planning time later is something that's not a real strong concept in those 5 and 6-year-olds yet. So you can see it's more appropriate on the right. We've got walking feet, cleaning up, helpful hands, and showing respect. And again, you can see every kid in this classroom has made some sort of commitment for excellence that day based on their classroom expectations. Again, greetings are an important part. We talk about class meetings. Dr. Sullivan was talking about them with the Brain Start Smart. It's an important piece of the day. Not everyone understands the importance of that, so we train them on the importance and arm them with tools to do that. So we've got different ways to greet in the morning. There's tons of different ways to do this being one. A kindness tree. Everyone deserves to be talked to about their accomplishments and be made proud of what they're doing. This is a celebration in your classroom. Again, helping feel that power of empathy. I know every day when I come to work, I feel successful. I feel good about, I want to do that again, right? I got to raise the bar. Like, I got to do better than yesterday. Well, same thing with kids. So we give them jobs, right? We help them feel part of the team, help them feel part of the process. Again, it's a very simple thing that has a very strong effect. And if we don't have a combination of these things in place, we aren't developing that school culture as much as we need to be. And we find that these skills and these learnings help classroom teachers with tons of experience and with minimal experience create that stronger classroom culture and expectations. As I already shared with you, we've got the Wish Well routine where we develop empathy in kids for those that are missed. Again, when you return, we missed you yesterday, Chris. This is what we learned. I'm here to help you get back on track. Conflict resolution is a very difficult skill. In our trainings over time, and after we've armed teachers and students with the necessary skills to talk about their feelings, we teach them strategies to roll back time and talk about how they would handle a situation differently. And there's a board that they can stand on and walk through the problem-solving process with an adult in the early stages and then on their own once they've mastered that skill. But just imagine a group of students in a room, in a school, in a building, in a district that are all armed with these problem-solving skills that help them pause before they make a bad decision or recognize that they're about to make a bad decision and they need to regulate, but then solve and address that problem later. As well as we do this in our faculty meetings. I didn't, for time, I didn't do that with you today to regulate us. You've had a lot of content today. We could have done, an opportunity to unite and connect, but I chose for that to save that for a later day and time with you. I've mentioned a couple times that Brain Start Smart. It's a super important piece of every day. As Dr. Sullivan shared, that we're looking to grow that piece in the middle schools as well. There's 4 aspects of a strong Brain Start Smart. The first is uniting together, coming together as a team, okay? The second is disengaging stress to ensure that no matter what happened on the walk to school, the ride to school, the dinner table last night, that we are at our optimal state. The third wave of that is connection, connecting with my group so that I can bring the best to all of you, and then a commitment. I like to think of this, and it took me a while to make this connection, but you think about a sports team. You think about you come onto the field or the court or you're leaving the bench again with the team. The one thing you always do before a game is put your hands together as you huddle up. That idea is to unite together to increase that energy. That idea is to increase your intention and to commit to that team working together to win. This is no different than what you're doing in a classroom each and every day, but making sure that you have that strongest start possible. I've got a short video. It's about 15 seconds. I hope we can hear it, but it's an example of a Brain Start Smart where a group of students do a commitment together. Now, in this instance, it's a class commitment, and there's some power behind that whole class united commitment of understanding those rules and expectations. And so this classroom repeats this each and every day. What you'll see in some of our sites is they'll get on the intercom, they'll get on the news, they have school-wide commitments that they make each and every day. So I would challenge you to go out into your schools and see what some of those are, and I'd be happy to advise you on some of those sites that you can see some of those whole schools. But hopefully my video works and you can hear it here. This is a class at Discovery Elementary.
Own our own actions, be responsible for me, respect others, and be an active learner.
All right, so real quick about today. So once we leave this morning meeting, I'm going to give you a few more minutes.
Volume wasn't that great. Sorry, I apologize. But again, they were uniting together, and you could see the hand gestures, you could see the movement, you could see the sense of all of them together, understanding what was expected for them, and she wished them for a positive start to their day that day. So again, there's the power of making sure we repeat that message and practice it. So again, you've heard from me. I've given you some data. I've given you some organizations, but here is some insight data from some of our teachers. And I'll spotlight only two. You have the slide. In more awareness to the role we play, more successful management of behavior, and increased class and learning time for all students. Again, back to where I started with those, our strategic plan is trying to limit those exclusionary factors. And again, I won't read you the other quotes, but I see you have them on your screen and have the opportunity to reflect on those at another time. So looking at the budget for 23-24 or 22-23, if we look at the second column there under the 22-23, you will see that the request later tonight for the training for the 225 individuals to participate is going to be at a tune of $225,000. That funding source has been secured by Title IV dollars and has already been approved and would just be waiting for your approval if you would give that. And then the summer pay to pay the individuals to participate in that will be from ESSER funding. We would hope to continue our journey later, but the first initiative is to secure our summer training so we can wind out 1 year and wind up for potentially another year moving forward. We've put together an 8-year plan, but I didn't think that I should entertain you with an 8-year plan today when we have an initiative for now. But the idea is that we try and keep schools on a 3-year cycle, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and each year along that journey continue to bring new schools on. I've worked with Leading and Learning, and we've already selected the next 8 schools. I've not informed them of that until we determine that we're going to move forward with this initiative. And with that, I open things up to all of you.
Thank you for that presentation. Do I have any board participation in conversation?
I do.
Ms.
I have some
Campbell, Ms. Jenkins. All right, Ms. Wright.
I'm like, I got my
Go.
my buzzer hit. Okay, couple quick questions. I participated in the Parent Academy. I was one of those parents.
Great.
I wanted to know what was the overall participation that you saw from the district on parents. How many parents participated in this academy?
So that first one that you attended, Ms. Wright, was very low, including I was absent as well. During the hurricane, it was minimal. I believe there were 3 parents there, 4 parents maybe. There was more staff than parents that day.
Yes.
On the second event, I didn't get a count, but we had way more than that. There was, I would say, 30, 35 individuals that were here that night for that Parent Academy.
Okay, one of the other things, and I mean, you're gonna have to forgive my frankness with you on this, because I will be I'm gonna be transparent on where I stand on this. I think the concept behind this is a really great concept. I was challenged with reading the easy to love, difficult to discipline. So really diving into this conscious discipline, what is this? And really what I see this is more of an initiative for a parent's perspective on how a parent is going to handle disciplining their child. Now, while I see that this could be beneficial in our classrooms, because I have actually heard the raving reviews of some of the teachers who are great salespeople for this program, what my concern is the reality of what does this look like in the classroom on stopping and really, what are you going to do when you have 20 kids in the class and you have one child who you need to calm down from a red brain and get them to a green brain? And what does that look like? And how do we implement that? So those are my concerns for this program. The idea is great. I don't know that it works, and then I think the data is reflecting that it doesn't work all the time. It does sometimes, but not all the time, and we really can't figure out why. So with those things in mind, I think it's a great idea, but I just would like to see some solid guaranteed successes out of this. And yes, it's moving the needle very, very finely, but when I look at the overall budget, is there anything else that's comparable that maybe we could look at that would do or achieve the same result that we're hoping to achieve?
I mean, there's always going to be another something. The question is, do you want to go through that initiative fatigue, or do you want to stay the course of something and commit to it? So that would be the first thing I would say to you is if you were to speak to those principals, they would say, I don't know that I have another initiative in me to continue. I don't know that I can shift left, shift right. This has been my constant, and I'm seeing that needle moving. I would say to you, with regard to the discipline, is I've said the word discipline multiple times when I've said conscious discipline, but never did I reference consequencing a kid or providing discipline. That is not what this is about. This is about setting up structures, routines, establishing that school family, and recognizing when I'm not at my best, that I need to make sure that I, as the adult, check myself before I could wreck that situation, and also help model that for my students so that they could start to see that. It's a process that takes time. And so again, the classroom is that optimal time and place, and the classroom isn't always that time and place. But what we do then is when we know that it's not working for Chris, right? We start to identify what skills isn't Chris armed with. What skills do I need to explicitly teach Chris? What skills can I connect Chris with his mentor, with his guidance counselor, with his social worker? What skills at that parent-teacher conference can I talk about so we have a universal language together that we can bridge school to home? So again, back to the discipline, it's about teaching you what's appropriate and how to conduct yourself through activities that give you that sense of belonging. Again, that united, that I don't want to let you down.
Yeah, and my mic turns off. Okay. I can understand and respect that. How does this play into like our PBIS schools? Because that is something that we currently have.
Sure. So we have PBIS, and I oversee that program as well, and as a PBIS school. PBIS and conscious discipline do go hand in hand. PBIS will take you so far, and depending on your environment, that may be far enough. PBIS gives you many of the structures needed for a strong Tier 1 program. And it gets you started, and I would encourage all schools to start there before they begin on this journey. This starts to provide all the pieces after that. PBIS is a process where you set clear expectations, you come up with procedures to monitor those, you reward them, you come up with plans to mentor for them, sounding very similar, right, in some ways and shapes and forms. We are seeing different results in those two programs right now, PBIS versus conscious discipline, with regard to some of that disciplinary data.
So PBIS would stay in place, is that what you're saying?
Yes, we would continue down both journeys. Again, both are important. I would say that starting on that PBIS journey is the building blocks of helping arm our administrators and our teachers with the first layer, the first step of giving clear expectations and communication. It is not enough for that second and third step. And I say that as a principal of a building that relaunched PBIS at a school, committed to everyone to retraining, and then there was not enough after that. So we had to bring on other tools to add to. And it has this, it's a great start, and it procedurized things for a time, but you have to grow out of that. And that has kind of a ceiling that, at least in my opinion and what I'm seeing in the data from our sites that are identifying that as a PBIS site.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak on this? Ms. Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Excuse me. You know, this is an important conversation for us to have because we've been having the conversations about discipline. And, you know, just to clarify, you know, when we talk about this is about behavior regulation, behavior self-regulation, and not because there, you know, when we talk about that data up in the early slides, the goal of this program, the results of this program is not that students are committing the same behaviors, but at this school they're not being disciplined. That is not what this is about. These numbers are about there's less behaviors to have to deal with, which is our goal, right? Not always, but you know, we're pretty early in. You know, and one of the things I was thinking about this data is, I mean, it looks like there's some good starting points in some places, but even though you guys did a good job of trying to match up, I was like, okay, these are pretty close and whatever. It really can't account for some other things, some other challenges, such as teacher turnover and lack of staffing that we had. So this data some of these schools might have been more successful if they hadn't had 8 to 15 teacher openings. So, I hate to judge a school based on this data because, some of them that was just a challenge that it doesn't matter. You can be the best PBIS conscious discipline school in the district and you were going to have some challenges there because you had, revolving door of teachers in certain classrooms. So I went to the teacher, one of the low attended parent academies, appreciated it actually, even though like I said, I'm almost done with middle school with my last child, but really picked up some things that helped with my child that needs some help with self-regulation. I'm like, ooh, I probably need to go through it again because I forgot how to get from one brain to the other brain. Maybe you can share your book with me when we get done. I've seen the kindness tree at one of my schools. Loved that idea. We're recognizing things that get to the heart of the matter. I strongly think that I appreciate your invitation. And we were challenged before previously and last year, I think sometime, to visit some of these schools that are in phase 2 so we can get in those classrooms and see the difference of just the creating the structure. It's creating a structure, which is a tool that our teachers really need, especially so many coming into teaching without the experience, with coming in from other fields, just creating that structure that is a school-wide structure. So if you have a situation like what you described, where, Ms. Wright, where you have a kid who's melting down, someone steps in, or it's maybe they're not in the classroom, maybe it's in the cafeteria, maybe they're on the playground. Someone else in that building is speaking the same language or using the same vocabulary as the teacher who trained that child because the whole school's on the same page. And that gets a little challenging when you've got experienced teachers who kind of have this method and new teachers who don't have a method at all, and you're trying to get everybody on the same page. So that's one thing that's powerful about something like this. But we need to get in there, and I'm now, obviously I visited my schools, but I want to get in some of these recommended classrooms too so I can see it more closely. I appreciate what you said, Chris, about initiative fatigue. I just have to remind this board, over the last 2 years, we've had brand new reading curriculum and instructional materials. We've had brand new math curriculum and instructional materials. And we've had, in addition to this, new technology initiatives. We've had to switch over to Focus, which was a good switch, but it was just more to add on, in addition to just the other challenges that we have. And I remember when I first got on the board, one of my very first meetings with Jane Klein, talking about initiative fatigue, was we went from, I can't even remember all the not IMAX, but iStation and MobiMax, that's what it was, MobiMax, iStation, now we're doing iReady. Why do we keep doing these new things? And our teachers were really feeling it because we're changing things every year. So I think that we need to continue on with this and with this structure. We've got something that people are buying into, that we're seeing some success at the classroom level, even if all the data doesn't show exactly where we'd like to be. In this world of instant gratification, we want to see the numbers, we want to see the percentages, we want to see them now. I don't care if it's been a year and a half, you need to prove to me that it works. I don't think we're there yet to say that it's not working. And again, when we're so focused on the discipline issues, we're going to have to deal with things on the back end of how do we deal with things. We are dealing with that, of when the behaviors happen, can we deal with them better? But ultimately, it's more important to not have those behaviors to begin with, because we have good structures in place that are keeping our kids focused on the right kind of behaviors, the right kind of actions, so that we don't have to deal with them on the back end. I don't want to send more kids to the ALCs. I want them, that's in an ideal world, we just stop having to do that because everybody starts behaving. We're not in an ideal world, but if we can do some things to get kids to stop and think, to me, that's what this is about. Stop and think. And give them the tools and the vocabulary so that everybody's on the same page, and getting them to stop and think. And that empathy, because, when I talk to even my own child who struggled with some of these things, they frequently don't think about how my behavior affects someone else. We are living in a world of adults who cannot figure out how their behavior affects someone else. So now we've got this that's intentionally focusing students on how does my behavior not just affect me, but how does it affect the whole class? We just had a conversation about that Youth Truth data. How one of the items was students disrupting class. Can we can we get a hold of that so that that's not happening and students don't fear what's going on in their classroom? They don't fear other students, but they're starting to be empathetic. They're starting to realize, oh, my behavior doesn't just affect me, it affects the people around me, and I just messed up the class. But yet there's room for grace. I see grace in this. I see, places for second chances and learning and reteaching, all those things. It could be this, it could be something else, but this is where we're already, I think we need to stay on this horse and ride it and to, I always hate, I think the word fidelity is overused, but you come up with another word that means the same thing. But with fidelity, to get it done with fidelity, especially in these schools that are struggling so much, and see where we go from here.
Yeah,
Can you tell me again, what does ODR mean?
Office Discipline Referral.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I need a
You're fine.
key at the bottom.
Thank you, Chris. I'd agree. I think that the underlying thing that you may not be aware of is that we're going to discuss it later on, but there's a push by the board to start putting together the true metrics on whether things are or are not going to be valuable enough to continue those processes. I know as an individual that conscious discipline follows a lot of the other teachings as a former teacher, that there's a lot of stuff that you do just naturally as a good teacher inside of this, right? Like those are some of the actions. So I didn't want you to misunderstand like some of the stuff that we were having a conversation about. I think the move is we have X amount of dollars. What are the metrics that show that it works? If that's there, then you know what I mean? And that's where I think our board is going to end up going with the budgetary process. So, I'm so sorry. I cut off you guys. Oh, I'm so sorry. Ms. Jenkins, go ahead. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Jean's ready.
Jean, go ahead. So sorry.
That's
I
all
didn't
right.
know anybody else was going. I looked at you too.
You don't always have to be last.
Yes.
But I'm sure you will be on this one too. But that's
Yeah, yours.
So, again, thanks for putting this together. I'm going to be similar to what Ms. Wright said is, we're going to be frank, it's nothing personal, and those numbers are very subjective. If that was a sales pitch, I would probably say leave those out. Because one has the right to say that clientele is not the same between the two schools, and this is where school leadership matters. I've been in these schools, and I see where it's working and where it's not. And school leadership is crucial, and I think that leads to a lot of issues in schools, period. If we are admitting that we have to pay, basically to teach individuals how to be quality teachers, I mean, we do have to admit then our universities as a whole are not preparing teachers to teach in the classroom. And that's just a fact. I heard, and nothing, Ms. Campbell, when you said that new teachers have no plan at all.
That's not what I said.
Just hang on.
I couldn't read my writing. No method. You said no method. And this has nothing to do with you, but they do. These new teachers, we do have methods, and they should have really good methods coming out of our universities and what they're being paid to be taught. You know, they called it apprenticeships, but I call it student teaching. That's where you do develop your methods. And they should have the state-of-the-art methods right there. But in the state of Florida, we have alternative certification to teaching. This is not a knock at any of our teachers that are coming out of professions that have no clue on the teaching aspect. So here we are paying for them to learn a method. It is frustrating when I look at dollars, because I'm responsible to people that are going to be emailing me and calling me about spending money on teaching teachers how to teach. And is that a job that we're supposed to be doing? We mentioned, is this really about parenting? But, you know, it's hard enough that, I mean, I can see the emails coming now. Our kids can't read, and this is what we're focusing on. Those are questions that we have to answer, and hopefully we can say we can walk and chew gum, and we are worrying about them not being able to read or do math at a certain age. But this is an awful lot of money with very little data backing that up. I do understand, do we start another initiative? That's one thing teachers say, okay, every 2 years we go to something new, and it's really the same thing.
Yeah.
It's a very expensive throw it on the wall and see what sticks, however. And this is where we're at all over again. So I don't want to repeat what some of you have already thrown out there, but you know, when I see programs that talk a lot about safe spaces in classrooms. There's a lot of issues I see with that when we need to be teaching. So there's only so much time we have in a class day, and if we're spending a lot of it on developing that culture, this is when we really need to be teaching those kids how to read. And that's the bottom line. And I know you're doing your job, and it's all from the heart, and it's all good. But again, when you see the cost of this over the amount of years, this is just one more step and one more phase. You know, I just hope, and I'm assuming it's going to go forward, but I just hope moving forward you hear this, and we can really see that this is working, that we measure it. And just because now we're in year 2, because now you're saying we were in year 1, so we really need year 2. I hope it's not just, we're in year 2, we really need year 3. We need to be able to measure it and be willing to say, this really isn't making a difference.
Yeah, my crystal ball is working only halfway, and that's my prediction for you, yeah.
But again, these are real conversations, and I'm sure we'll get hit back from it that we're not supporting things, but these are concerns, and I think we'll, I'm going to end it right there. But I do appreciate all what you're putting forth.
If I could just add to that, I would say, as a leader, I had a saying that I said to all of my staff all the time, and it is, you don't have to be bad to get better. And the best leaders of the buildings are the best coaches. And if you aren't coaching people, they aren't growing, you're stuck where you are. So the best leaders of the people I mentor, the people that I've trained, be a good coach. And this is giving them those skills to be a good coach.
Thank you, Chris. Ms. Jenkins?
Ms. Campbell has some
Yeah,
additional
I asked if I could
Well-
go to address. I appreciate that you went back, Mr. Trent, because I recognize that how many of our teachers, and we had that presentation by Dr. Green just a few weeks ago, how many of our teachers are not coming out of college prep programs, of teacher academies. And that trend is going to continue because colleges are actually shutting down their programs because so few people are going into education programs. So that trend is only going to increase, not decrease. We're recruiting teachers out of everywhere to be from subs, from the military. The governor's put the military program from growing from IA. Some of them are going to now be able to come into the classroom without even a bachelor's degree. So moving forward into one. But, so it's really important to recognize that people haven't had classroom management instruction. And the other thing I would suggest is, I hear you. We need to be teaching reading, right? But you can't, it's really hard to teach kids to read and to do math when you can't get them all to sit and listen and be respectful. When you are constantly, you talked about whack-a-mole earlier. If you're constantly whack-a-moling behaviors instead of having the standard set, and I know there's talk about conscious discipline and where it might come from and what it might lead to. And I hear your concern about the safe spaces because it sounds like there's connotations in that language that sometimes we get worried about. But this is really important, that whatever we do, some kind of program of this self-regulation is important because our teachers can't teach if they can't get everybody focused. It would be in an ideal world, they all come in, they sit down and we learn math and we learn science and then we go to PE and then we go home, but it takes more nowadays to get everybody on the same page, and our kids are coming from all different directions. I would also suggest, I went back and looked at the agenda item for tonight. It's committing for 1 year. It's actually, all we're doing is committing to this training. The agenda item tonight is to approve for these, how many people?
225.
225 people to go to a conference. And so a week long, right?
5 days, yes.
5 days. So that's a pretty long conference. So that's what we're committing to. I hear what you're saying. Then it's the next year. Right. But when we get to this place next year and they come back to us, they decide, we need to keep going, and they come back to us, then we will have more data and we'll have longer data, and we'll have had the time to get in and see how's it working on a class-to-class, school-to-school level. But I appreciate that you're giving it to us in bits and pieces, because that's probably a smart idea right now.
Ms. Jenkins?
I'm going to use some of my skill sets I learned in conscious discipline right now. I speak bluntly too, and conscious discipline has been villainized, politicized, criticized without an understanding or willingness to understand what it is. It's not new. it's been here a really long time. I had the opportunity of using it when I worked for our pre-K ESC itinerant department. And I also had the opportunity of being exposed to it as a new mom. And it's all about self-regulation. It's not about stopping negative behaviors, especially when you're working with our little guys, 3 to 5 years old is what we were working with. It's about lessening that behavior, potentially, maybe ceasing it, but at least lessening it in order for that child to be able to self-regulate at some point, giving them that skill set to get back to focusing on work a lot faster than they may have if they didn't have that skill set. It's about modifying behavior, replacing behavior, not just simply discipline, which I wish they would change the name, because quite frankly, it doesn't make any sense to the concept of the theory behind it. The belief system behind it is not just about having a consequence and punishing that child. It's about talking about why you feel that way. For adults to recognize that children have emotions too, and they have a right to feel those emotions, identify those emotions, live through those emotions, understanding there's consequences for those decisions and emotions sometimes. But giving them a safe space to feel them and figure out when it is appropriate and how to react to them. I had the opportunity to be at the parent academy that probably had more attendance of Brain States. And I felt like it was a really healthy mix of parents and staff. I was actually really happy to see staff there. As much as it was geared towards parents, I was happy that the staff was inquisitive enough, maybe they weren't participating in their school yet, and wanted to figure it out and hear what it was about, and I appreciated that very much. It's about establishing healthy adult to child, child to adult relationships. And in some of our schools, that is so critical because they aren't necessarily always getting that in their home environments. And so it's a bigger picture than just providing that safe and connected environment, because you can't learn if you're not safe and connected, like you said. But we have to look at the world we're living in right now. We're well aware that our children are struggling with mental health. We're well aware that we don't have enough social workers, guidance counselors to address those needs and meet the needs of those students. We don't have enough resources in the state of Florida to meet the needs of pediatric mental health in the first place. And so if we can at least try to arm some of our students with a personal skill set to attack those challenges from a very young age, we're at least giving them some kind of toolkit to take with them throughout the rest of their life to get through those challenges. But we're also opening the door for that relationship with an adult in the building that hopefully they can connect with and communicate with. You know, we just, and we're going to be acknowledging it tonight, but, you know, Child Abuse Prevention Month. And it's a grim statistic and data, but quite frankly, our teachers and our staff members in our schools are often the ones who are making the calls about what a child is experiencing in the world around them. And so those connections are critical on so many different levels, not just education-wise. Ms. Campbell said this too, but I'm just going to say it again. I mean, this is something that we just discussed in this middle school presentation. Our students are telling them they don't feel connected. And the kids that we have in middle school right now didn't experience conscious discipline or a mindset of PD for teachers to kind of rethink the way that they're thinking about things. The question about paying for teaching teachers how to teach is just interesting to me because we do PD constantly. We spend a ton of money on professional development for our staff. And so to not recognize the value in developing our educators in the area of social emotional skills, not only for the students, but for themselves, I struggle with that one. And I encourage people, there's a viral video right now on the internet, and I don't know, I feel like everybody's seen it at this point, of a little 4-year-old little son and his mom. And he's talking to his mom in his bedroom about a bad choice that he had made. And it's the most incredible thing in the world to watch. But to me, that's an experience of a child who was raised in an environment that had the same concepts of conscious discipline. Being able to identify your feelings and emotions and talk about them, and identifying that, yeah, I made a bad choice, it wasn't okay, you know, maybe I can do better. It's the most incredible thing to watch, and I encourage people to find it if they haven't seen it yet. But thank you for all that you do. I hope that we continue to do those parent academies. I know it's tough to get parents in here after a long work day, and some parents are working. But again, I was really encouraged that we had staff members there too. So maybe kind of rethinking the way that we're doing it, offering maybe more of an, you know, e-learning opportunity of some sort.
All right, thank you. Mr. Reed, how are the schools selected? Because it seemed like a lot of mine were on there.
A lot of yours? Yeah, it was all about you. The first year the opportunity was put out there and they volunteered. So that's where the
Okay.
8 came in. An 8th school fell off, and that's how I joined that team. The following year, I went on some recruitment and said, I have an opportunity for you. This next round, if we move forward with that, would be I sat down with Leading and Learning and we selected them together with all of their directors. I've yet to make those phone calls yet.
So there may be principals that don't voluntarily come into this. They're kind of selected through a process and said, hey, you should do this.
Yeah, again, they're not ready at that moment. They currently have something that they're launching or they're continuing, and they want to continue and see that through until they're ready for that piece. So again,
Okay.
I don't want to demand someone to take that on.
Yeah, no, I was just curious. And the other thing that and I'll be honest with you, like I said, like these are practices that I didn't go to an educational institution. I came in from the outside. I was certified over 3 years and did a darn good job at teaching. And the bottom line is that a lot of these practices, they come natural and they're taught through the process of having somebody there. So the issue is that a lot of the things that when I look at this is the core of what a good teacher does in many different ways. And then there's some other things that I truly believe when I look at this sustainable model, so if it's going to cost $225,000 for 225 people to go to, then if we're going to do, say, a third or a quarter, or, you know, you start adding that, it starts to exponentially get more and more expensive. So I think that one of the comments is that I agree with Ms. Jenkins in many of the comments that she says about best practices and stuff like that. I think where the divergent from where I take a look at it is over a series of time, we're going to be expanding a budget like we are now to have deliverables that we're going to look at. And where I would say is that it gets to a certain point where at some point we could actually hire our own staff to do a lot of these different things, and they could also do other things that are more in line with some of the stuff that maybe some of the other principals may want to do, stuff like that. You see what I mean? So that's all. So looking at it from a perspective of sustainability over a long period of time, it gets bigger and bigger, costs more and more. Are there metrics to support that? And then if not, then can we do this ourselves and have it come up? Because we now have experts inside the building. We have multiple schools as sites, stuff like that. I think that those were just some of my things. You know, when I was teaching, they taught us about having a structure inside the class and sticking to the structure, because that keeps kids engaged, right? And I heard somebody say, and I may have been Mr. Trent, that like when you have to stop and do this, then all of a sudden the rest of the class, and I can see that happening. So like if I'm dealing over here with something, then the rest of the class starts going, if they haven't been trained, if there's not engagement and stuff like that. So I think that there are a lot of good best practices out there that people use to engage inside their classrooms. This may be one of them, and we just take a look at it from a metrics perspective, that's all. So is everybody else good on that? Ms. Han, did you have anything to say? We're good? All right, thank you very much. I think it is now, yes, sir, great presentation. Hey, thank you for all your exuberance when you're speaking and stuff like that. I can tell that you really love this and that you're invested in it, so thank you. Just
Thank
like
you.
you were when you were a principal and you left me with all those parents.
I always try and leave my mark.
No, I know. All right, so Ms. Hand, you have 22 minutes. Would you like to, and then there's a couple other things we would like to talk about, but I can push my stuff to the evening. What would you like to do?
I would like to cover the Thule agreement and the capital very quickly, if
You
you
can
don't
do it in
mind.
22 minutes. Okay.
Yes,
I
sir.
can push the other stuff to the meeting, and we can get them out of here by 4:30. So the floor is yours.
Okay, you have the Thule agreement on your agenda tonight. This was tabled from the previous meeting. Ms. Curry had requested a 50-year lease term in order to secure financing for the construction improvements, the scope of which has grown quite a bit over time. Met with Ms. Curry, and we added some deliverables to the lease agreement based on the board's request. One of those deliverables is an annual report, and that will give the board a kind of a summary of the performance of Kyler as a community resource in terms of providing classes to the community. They were focusing on STEM and workforce development type of work. So the annual report has been added to the lease agreement. We also put some construction deliverables into the lease agreement, and those are listed on, I believe it's page 7. And those include obtaining a building permit for improvements necessary to occupy the building by December 31st, 2023, starting construction of the renovations necessary to occupy by July 1st, 2024, and completion of those renovations by July 1st, 2025. And this is included in the termination clause so that we may terminate with a 90-day notice in the event that those milestones are not met by Thule Community Development Group. Mrs. Curry is here today if you have questions of her, but we both agree that these are appropriate terms and hopefully meet the board's intent for the milestones.
Any conversations? Ms. Jenkins? No?
No.
Okay. Mr. Trent, good? Ms. Wright?
No, thank you for being willing to amend this lease, just so that we have some deliverables that really help us make sure that we are, you know, that the organization's doing what they're promising us that they're going to do, which I know your heart is to change the community, and I think that this building will definitely do that. So I'm comfortable moving forward with the amended lease.
Is Ms. Thule, so I can direct her when I talk, where is she in the crowd?
She's here.
Ms.
Yeah.
Thule, how you doing? I just want to say thank you for starting this initiative. We fully support you in everything you're doing. I would love to come up there, say hi, see how I can help. I was trying,
Yeah.
Miss Hands was having heart palpitations when I was saying, we should just get all our contractors and show up there and do it for free, right? Like some sort of home renovation project. Yeah, I know, but I just want to say, you know, the lifeblood of our communities are set with individuals like you that commit themselves to something greater than just what they do on a regular basis, and I think that you are doing something amazing. So if there's anything we can do to help you out, just reach out to me. I know how to do like plumbing and wiring and stuff like that, so it may not turn out so well, and Miss Han, again, is having heart palpitations, but I just want to tell you that I am committed to you. So if you need me, I'm there. And I've been excited about this from the beginning. So, Ms. Han, is that all you needed on that?
Yes, sir, thank you.
All right, next up, capital.
The capital allocation plan, I'm going to ask Ms. Lisinski to kick us off and talk as fast as I do, but this is important because the tail end of this has the recommended capital allocations, and some of these projects are projects that I'm working on right now from my facilities perspective that you're going to start to see on your board agenda, so we'd like to get some feedback from the board. So, Ms. Lisinski?
Thank you.
So one thing that I can do is I can move forward to that portion if that's to save time. And also send out the slides to you with some more explanation so you can understand where we're going
It's
here.
your guys' presentation, however you want to do it.
Okay,
I'd like to see a little bit of overview, but if you could move through that pretty quickly.
sure.
Thank you.
Okay, let me. So you've seen this slide before, and where I wanted to focus today is the capital projects, the yellow circle, where you can see that's part of our funding. And this slide breaks that out a little bit further. You can see on the left side, the capital projects, about 20% of all funds. And then when you break out the capital funds on the chart on the right, you can see how things are broken out. Sales surtax and tax levy are pretty much the same. And I think that's a very important point because we are very, very fortunate to have the community support us for this sales surtax. If we didn't have the sales surtax, you can see as we go on, the funding that we would have to repair facilities, buy equipment, and those kind of things. And so capital funds, they're unique. They have unique rules. You cannot move funds between these funds within the capital, and some common goals or guardrails that you might want to keep in mind is equipment purchased or facility projects should last at least 5 years, and it can't be used for instructional materials or staff, custodial, or grounds functions. And instructional materials is textbooks or something like iReady, or you can't pay for the staff of instructional teachers. And custodial or grounds functions, that one is a little bit odd, but you can pay for repair of the equipment. So a floor scrubber or a lawnmower that you're replacing is something that you can do with capital funds. I know Sue had talked last board meeting a lot about the importance of infrastructure for schools. The bottom line is school facilities affect health, behavior, engagement, learning, and growth and achievement. So it is a very, very important part of the pie. And again, you can see the half-cent sales surtax split out by facility renewal, education technology, and security. Again, we're very, very fortunate that the voters approved the 6-year extension. And I don't want to speak for Sue, but I might try to say this, and correct me if I'm wrong. The previous referendum was for things like, the basic blocking and tackling of roofs and HVAC and those kind of things. And this renewal we're able to actually look to the classrooms and labs and athletic equipment and facilities. So this is, around that we can really start focusing on all the things that we've been talking about with reimagining middle school, but I'll move on. This next slide, the capital fund impact fees, and that is a one-time assessed on new residential development. So, and it's meant to offset the cost, because if you build a new development, that's going to cost taxpayers more money for new schools, additions, things like that. So on the other side, you can see the uses for impact fees. And then capital fund PICO, I put this in here because it's going to come up again in a couple slides. But PICO used to be, I think, in 2020 or 19, I believe the district used to get those dollars. Now the PICO goes straight to charter schools, and we are a pass-through, and that it's for maintenance, repair, renovation, remodeling. And so now what we're really here to talk about is the capital fund tax levy. You'll hear it all kinds of different ways. It's the local property taxes that we get for capital. We get 1.5 mils, and the allowable expenses you can see are remodeling, construction, maintenance, renovation, school buses, replacement of equipment, replacement of computer equipment and software, property and casualty insurance, and that's going to be big because it really went up this year. Motor vehicles, which includes the white fleet, payment of opening day collection. I like that. What that really is the library books of a new school. So for the middle school that's going to open up, LCI will pay for those library books. And also this last line is interesting to me, but it says you can pay for facility maintenance with capital millage, but not in a capital fund. So Hillsborough included a I'm sorry. Well, one of their legislative initiatives was to change some of that. And what they wanted to do was just have the capital, being able to fund facility maintenance within the capital fund, because now we can fund it, but we have to transfer it to Fund 100 and then pay it out that way. So this would save a lot of different, counting, and it brings more clarity, and you're able to track expenses much better. But the way that HB1 included the language, you can see on the very bottom, it says payment of salaries and benefits for employees whose job duties support activities funded above. So when you just read that, so I called Hillsborough to say, what was your intent? And the intent was just to be able to spend capital dollars for the facility maintenance portion that we normally transfer over. But the way that reads, it looks like you could almost pay for any salary that supports anything above there. So I sent out some requests, and Hillsborough's going back out to have the Audit General look at that and see what that line means now. So it is in HB1. This slide, just real quick, just shows you that through these capital committees, we have funded White Fleet replacement for the last 4 years. You can see last year and this year, we're continuing to robust that replacement, and that's just so important. We don't want to put dangerous vehicles on the road. We want people to be safe. So we're collaborating and formalizing a replacement plan for the White Fleet.
Ms. Lisinski, I just want to remind you, we have 10 minutes before the 4:30 mark.
Sorry, okay.
No, it's okay.
I thought I was going fast.
You're doing great. I don't know how long it is. I just wanted to remind you, that's all.
Okay. Language here, and the reason that I said that PICO is important is the new language that is passing are the House side. They appropriated money for PICO, but they do want to do this, they created this formula, and so charters will, or most likely, get a portion of our LCI, which didn't happen before. The Senate side, they added another change, and what they're saying is the 7 largest school districts will pay the funding for charters maintenance. So more to come on that, but you can see that there's a move to share our LCI dollars with charters, and that will just, reduce our pie and the amount of money that we can spend on facility maintenance. The debt schedule, you can see that Brevard's tax assessment history, and you can see that amazing growth that we've had.
Is that our mill?
And then 2021 current tax assessment is the pre-COVID. So you can see how much.
'Cause that looks like what it was before. Yeah. Is that 1.5 mils or 1 mil?
Sorry?
Just hang on. What does that 70 million represent? Out of which taxes from the?
Oh, no, that is the taxable values of property.
And we take how much of a percentage of that in order to get?
The 1.5 mil.
Yeah, okay. That has gone up significantly.
Okay, and you can see here, we take 96% collection of 103 million. We have to pay the debt. We also transfer out maintenance transfers. Like I said, the property insurance has increased tremendously. And when you look at the bottom line, we have $40.9 million to spread to fund all of the capital requirements for next year that are to prioritize. And this next slide is the committee that we are in, and I have to tell you that, we look at health and safety, support of the learning environment, upgrading existing equipment, innovation, affordability, and we work very well together. There's times where other people are advocating for items that aren't theirs just because we're so passionate about it and want to do the best for kids and for the district. So that said, we're going to have,
I'm going to take over just to,
you're going to go quick?
I'm going to go quick.
Okay.
So we have several groups of projects that are on the capital list. The top of the list are the educational FF&E. This is our typical FF&E allocation. We also work with students or with secondary on CTE projects, so we include their requests. So those are kind of off the top. The next off the top are school buses. So they have requested 4.5 million. That's what we included in the program. And then there's some very small items relating to transportation and warehouse and distribution that we just leave off the top. And then Mr. Cheatham and I, in terms of ET and facilities, we basically negotiate the rest because both of us have more than one funding source for our projects and programs. He's got ESSER funds, he's got sales surtax, I've got sales surtax, and we try to do as much as we can within the funding that is available. For me, I have many multi-year programs, so some of these tracks, for example, you'll see 2.1 million in the program. Those are the last two tracks that we are going to rubberize. This is important because you'll see on your board agenda for April 25th, the Titusville High School track renewal, and that's really coming out of this pot of money. So would appreciate a head nod on that so that we can move forward, and we'll advance fund that out of this year's capital, but I need to make sure that it's in next year's capital program. And there's a handful of things like that. That's the big one. You'll also see on my list for facilities, there are several programs that we are starting design with the intention of moving forward with the construction project. If there's additional money available, I think Cindy has estimated conservatively based on our uncertainty as to where the legislature is going to land on sharing this resource with charter schools. So if we have additional resources available, you'll see on the list that there are priority add backs. But where we are right now, we've balanced the project list with the resources that we have available. You see modern classrooms in there on the ET side. On the facilities side, you'll also see some investment in classrooms, flooring, that type of thing. We've done a really good job on our science labs. Those middle school science labs, those are coming to you at the next board meeting as well. The maintenance capital funding increase, that is moving additional money into maintenance to support those activities. We do that every year. It gets pulled out of the capital renewal and I transfer it over, and I'd like to start budgeting it appropriately. We are doing more in terms of contracted services because we have to. We've been hit with issues with rentals for chillers. If chiller breaks, and we've got to rent chillers. I've got no choice. So we've got that type of thing. We're doing student restroom renovations. We're investing heavily in athletics. We've had literally no investment in athletics until the last couple of years. So you're starting to see some multi-year projects to do athletic renewal. Elementary pavilions, that's an ask that we have on the part of the elementary schools. And then the one that I'm going to just really advocate for is the little one that says basketball goal renewal. Yeah, you heard Dr. Sullivan talking about middle school basketball, elementary basketball. If you have wandered around our schools, our basketball goals are in just horrible condition.
And they want to play each other.
They want to play. So I want to make those look nice. And where we've done that at a couple schools, it's been very impactful. Another one you see is athletics FF&E. There's a pretty big chunk of money there. That's not that is for specific things that we have been funding out of maintenance. So scoreboard renewal is probably the best example. Another example is goalposts, where our schools call maintenance and say, hey, our XYZ broke. Maintenance says, that's nice, we have no money, and things don't get fixed. So we're taking a capital approach to those types of items and want to fund that a different way rather than running it through the maintenance budget. So we can look at our assessment and say, these scoreboards need to be fixed. We're going to get new ones. This is a project, not a maintenance item.
Wrestling mats inside that FF&E?
No, they're not.
We might have to talk about that.
And then we have a couple of projects that have come about because of issues at schools. So O'Galley Stadium restroom is one where continually having problems with the plumbing when there's an event. And if you go out there, it's just bad. Let me just say that. Satellite Stadium restroom, that is a continuing problem too. They have big events. We believe that that is a function of inadequate design for big, huge events. So we're taking a look at what we need to upgrade there. West Shore Press Box, that's been a need at that school for quite some time, and they have been a strong advocate, and they don't have other facilities, so they need a press box because their scorers are sitting out in the rain. And then we're looking at middle school tracks in cooperation with the sales surtax. That is not a funded project in the capital plan, but we're going to try to cover that with surtax and get rolling, but you might see this back at a second year for middle school tracks. And then we also have 4 schools with no tracks, so we want to start looking at, do we want to add tracks to those schools in the future? So some of these have smaller numbers because we're just getting started. So that concludes our presentation, and happy to answer questions.
I'm sorry, can I add one thing? So this is the first round. So this is a recommendation to the board, and we're more than willing and happy to have you make recommendations, change things if you like. But I just wanted to let you know that, and it is a recommendation. We'll come back. This is just the first round, a starting point. And we also know needs change and stuff breaks. So we'll come back in June when we get the new estimate for property values. And
we'll have a budget.
I just want to add to that.
Yeah, and I would add one more thing. There is a project for ESF facility renewal that you may ask me about, and what that is about is the flooding that occurred. We are doing a drainage project at an as-yet-to-be-determined cost, and the other piece of that is the colonnades coming into the building. If you look up, there's been significant corrosion, and as we've gotten into it, there's some structural elements that need to be addressed. So that's what that project is about.
Ms. Campbell.
No, I appreciate this. I know that a lot of thought goes, and thank you for sharing the priorities, because some of the, there's some things on here that we would like to have, but safety has to come first, and when we have things that are falling apart, we're going to create unsafe situations. We obviously have to prioritize those. I appreciate starting on the middle school tracks. As a middle school track mom this season, I see those. And then they got to have a meet at a high school and went, It was amazing. So I appreciate that. Look, I know the middle school coaches would appreciate that. I just I always go to the things that didn't get funded or didn't get funded fully, and just I know that I appreciate that you guys are finding other ways, and frequently we have extra capital because we budget for the 96%, but frequently we always go over this, but we can't budget.
96.7 is the norm.
Right, so we can add some of that back in, and obviously we have some sales tax, which is overperformed, and hopefully we'll continue to do that, our expectations and budget. But can you talk to me about the elementary pavilions? I see it's, priority list design only, and then combining with the outdoor classrooms, we're kind of doing that together. So we're just kind of getting started on that, or is some of that in the sales surtax, or some of it was even in ESSER, I thought.
There was one in ESSER.
Okay.
And we are starting on design. I think we have 3 under design right now. And so those tend to end up being like $300,000 projects. They're big projects.
Right.
So we're just sticking our toe in the water on
right.
those.
And I love that idea and have advocated for that idea. But at the same time, we've got some safety issues here that have to be prioritized. So, what I'm hearing you say is that we'll have the plans in place so that if we have the funding, we're ready to go at such a time.
That's where we're heading. Yes.
Thank you. I am looking at the list and supportive of what you guys have come up with so far.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Ms. Jenkins. I'm good. All right. Mr. Trent. Ms. Wright, I think for me, Cindy, if you can send out a list of the budgetary, we're getting to a point where we're starting to get this, right? Like, we're like, okay, because I immediately, when I look at this, I'm like, hey, I'm going to try to talk to Sue about covering some of those athletic things like the mats and stuff like that, see where we can look at that for the future. There's some other things I was going to talk to her about. And this is good for the prompt, but you and I had sat down and we had mapped out, okay, we know that on like May 9th, there's going to be a budget that comes out, all that. If we can put together a schedule so the board members know, here's when this is, here's when this is, so that like today's meeting, we knew that this was on the agenda, but knowing like, hey, you guys might want to bring some of your capital requests to Ms. Hand prior to this to make sure that there's some sort of a plan going forward. So if there's a way that you can put together not only the dates of when we're getting stuff like the budget comes out, it's finally approved, all that. But then also, Tammy and I were looking at some of those proposed Tuesdays and stuff like that to give to you to talk about budget. Sue and I were talking about that. So if we can kind of tentatively put something together so that the board's prepared ahead of time to go talk to the communities and stuff like that.
Yes, we're absolutely doing that. You will see a schedule coming out soon, and we anticipate numerous workshops, especially as we transition to more zero-based budgeting. That's going to require some conversation between the board and our departments about what our priorities are. So Cindy's got the process started where we're all filling out lots of forms and got some metrics, and we're talking about what may or may not be eligible for millage. So we've got that piece in the mix, and so we anticipate a lot of conversations with the board coming up in the next 8 weeks or so regarding budget. Okay.
Perfect. And then, yes, we can take a look at those, be prepared for them. The other thing that I was going to do is our property insurance and stuff like that, I think we're in the process of going out. I don't know if we are right now or not, but we're going out for consultants and stuff like that. But our property insurance and stuff like that, I think I'm going to do a deep dive on because there's some extreme savings inside of there that we can use, both with boiler and everything else that I don't think we've been taking a look at because we've been focused so much on health, but there's a lot in that property side that we can take a look at. So I think that you bringing that up is great, and having high concerns over having a major increase in there with, we may not be bidding that thing correctly. The other thing is that I would, Ms. Sue, I would talk about those. There's a couple of things that I think dynamically we just look at from a perspective of we're asking schools to fund some of these things, whether it's athletics or something like that. But sometimes it's just not fair because, like when I was coaching wrestling, I coached at Space Coast, right? We had just fundraised and got brand new mats. But when we went down to Cocoa, they didn't have the proper mats, and we were dragging them all over. They would borrow our mats. So just some stuff like that. That's just an example, but,
All good, Mr. Susan. I think now that Dr. Sullivan has grasped athletics, we'll be looking at those needs. There's some funding in this year's capital plan for athletic FF&E, and we just need to kind of figure out where all that is because there was quite a bit in ESSER too, and many schools used their ESSER funding. So I want to get with Dr. Sullivan and absolutely get where you're going.
And then I also think there were some questions on, hey, what classrooms, what pavilions and stuff like that. So when we're going down this process, if there's a way to say, here's where we have those three, you know what I mean? Kind of give them so they can get excited about the projects at their schools and stuff like that. Other than that, I'm good. Without any further conversation, we can get out of here and go get something to eat prior to 5:30. We all good? Good, Miss Cindy? Good. All right, let's rock.